Hello and welcome to the Megacast. Today's event is entitled Ensuring Trust and Security in Enterprise IT and the Cloud. Today's event is brought to you by Actual Tech Media, and on this event you'll hear from presenters at Rapid7, Duo, Okta, Fortanix, KnowBe4, SolarWinds, and Zerto. We have an incredible lineup for you today. My name is David Davis of Actual Tech Media, and I'm excited to be your event moderator on this special Megacast. Thank you so much for joining us on this event today. Now, before we get started, we have a little bit of housekeeping we first need to cover. A few things you need to know about the event. We have some awesome prizes. I'll talk about the requirements to be eligible for those prize drawings in just a moment. We'll be announcing those prize drawings throughout the event, both in the chat as well as verbally after each presentation. We also have some questions for you. We have some poll questions. I'll be queuing those up here in just a little bit, and I'll be sharing the results of those polls with you. So we appreciate your participation in those in advance. We also want this to be an educational event. We want you to get all of your questions answered about the solutions you're learning about today. We know that you have security challenges and concerns, and there's a tremendous number of security threats out there today. So please use the questions box there. It's just to the right of the Handouts tab in your audience console. If you click on questions, we will do our best to ensure that every question gets answered. We'll be doing a dedicated Q&A session with each of the presenters on the event today, and I'll be queuing up the best questions for those Q&A sessions. So, please use that questions box, and I'll make sure that your questions get answered. And then social. We want this to be a social event. I'll be tweeting about the event. If you want to tweet about the event, you can use the Twitter icon at the bottom of your console there. If you click on that, the hashtag for today's event will be automatically appended. So I'll be monitoring Twitter, be following just about anybody who tweets about the event. So thank you for helping us to get the word out about what we're doing here with the Megacast. And then resources. On the Handouts tab, just to the left of the slides window, we have some hand-selected PDF resources you can download, as well as one link from KnowBe4, where you can give the KnowBe4 solution a try. In fact, specifically, that one takes you to sign up for the Ransom download. You can check that out. And then there's ebooks. There's some valuable solution briefs all about the different solutions you'll learn about today just below that. So make sure you check those out throughout the event. Download those and share them with your friends and family. And then prizes. So I said we had some awesome prizes, and we do. I wish I had one of these. These are the brand new Mac Minis, 3.2 gigahertz, i7, 16 gigs of RAM, 128 gigs of flash, keyboard and mouse not included. But these are awesome Mac Minis, and they would work really well for a home lab environment. We'll be giving out 5 of these on today's event, as well as an Amazon $500 gift card after every presenter. So make sure that you stay tuned for those. If you click on the event schedule in the bottom of your console, there's an icon there, and you can see the rough schedule for the event today, and you can see roughly when those prize drawings will be occurring. Now, you must be present on the live event to be eligible for the prize drawing, but there are some other legalese, prize terms, and conditions that you must qualify for. You can find those in the Handouts tab. If you scroll to the bottom, there's a link there to the ATM prize terms and conditions. All prize winners must submit an IRS Form W-9 to Actual Tech Media. Now, through the Megacast and EcoCast event series, we have given out thousands of dollars to charities. We have hand-selected these charities here to support, and we thank you in advance if you would like to when you win a prize, if you would like to donate that prize value to charity. All right, social media. I mentioned the hashtag. It's ATM Megacast. If you click on the Twitter icon on the bottom of the screen there and you type in your appreciation, kind words about the Megacast next to the hashtag, click submit, you'll be able to tweet directly from the console, and the hashtag will be automatically appended. You can follow Actual Tech Media on Twitter, and you can follow me as well. In fact, you'll find icons for actually, you won't find icons. They're not there right now. But you can follow Actual Tech Media on Twitter, and you can also follow us on LinkedIn. That's where we are posting all of our latest and greatest content, a Gorilla Guide links, our latest books, our latest videos. So make sure you follow Actual Tech Media on LinkedIn, also our YouTube channel, and our 10 on Tech podcast over in the iTunes Store are great ways to keep up to date on what we're doing and help you learn more about the latest and greatest in enterprise technology. Now, before I do a couple poll questions and then I introduce you to our first presenter, just a few things to keep in mind here. We're going to do some level setting when it comes to security. I mean, I know everyone has seen, the evening news and the ransomware attacks, and those are, scary, scary things. I was talking to the owner of a managed service provider a few weeks ago, and he said that ransomware is what keeps him up at night, and that's the number one threat he feels like to his business over any other possible thing that could happen. He feels like ransomware is the number one threat. I know organizations out there are not only struggling with ransomware, but compliance, preparing for disaster, just constant complexity, dynamically changing environments, massively growing data sets, and we in IT were continually forced to do what we can do to control costs. The bad news is there's some scary statistics out there. 36% of companies surveyed in one survey said they had experienced an internal or external security breach of some kind. When that happened, they lost 2.36 terabytes of data. That is a ton of data. And the average cost of downtime, I know there's a number of, a variety of different numbers out there when it comes to the average cost of downtime. This study said $900,000 was the average, data loss. And that varies greatly, of course, based on the type of industry that you're in and the time of, or the length of the outage. And then only 18% of those surveyed said that they felt their current data protection or disaster recovery solution was able to meet their future business challenges. So there's a lot of room for improvement, I'm sure, when it comes to better protecting, your company's data and better securing your environment. And that's why I'm excited to hear from experts today at the companies you see on the screen here. We'll hear from 7 different companies today, solutions ranging from security and event management, encryption, data protection, disaster recovery, managed security, managed SIEM systems, two-factor authentication, security awareness, all sorts of really innovative security solutions on the event today. All right, before we jump into it, I've got 2 quick poll questions for you. The first one is, which of these are your greatest security concerns in 2020? Now, I talked about how we're all struggling, we're all concerned about security, and I'm curious to find out what is your greatest security concern. And I'll share the results of this poll here with you in just a moment. And that way you can see how you stack up, against your peers on the event today. One of the scary statistics I saw is that it takes 196 days on average to identify a security breach. So that means that for more than 6 months, an attacker has been in a company. The security has been breached. They're pulling data out, and who knows what can happen in more than 6 months. It's a really scary statistic to think about that our companies could have already been breached, and we don't even know about it. So we'll hear about some cool solutions on the event today to help us prevent that type of thing. All right, let me share the results with you. And look at that. I hope I didn't influence the poll, but 52% said their greatest security concern is that they have been breached and they don't actually know about it. 50% said ransomware, and followed by 34% said unrecoverable data loss or theft. And then one final poll question before I introduce you to our first presenter, and that is, what's your time frame for updating your existing or selecting new security solutions? So I'll leave this up here for just a minute. All right. Thank you, everyone who responded to that poll question. We do appreciate it. And now it's time to introduce our first presenter on today's Megacast. I'm excited to introduce Mr. James McQuinigan, CISSP and Security Awareness Advocate at KnowBe4. James, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
I can, yeah. Thanks for being on. Take it away.
Thank you very much. Appreciate being here for this event today. So let's go to our first slide here. So navigating the ransomware landscape in 2020. So just a quick, brief information about who I am. Been with KnowBe4 now for several months, but prior to this, I came on board from a little German company called Siemens, where I was security awareness and product solution security officer for several years working for them. Currently, I'm also a part-time faculty with Valencia College doing security awareness programs, and involved with a lot of other groups here around Central Florida. Just a quick little bit about KnowBe4. Essentially, we are the world's largest integrated security awareness training and simulated phishing platform, the new school of security awareness. We're based here in Tampa Bay. We've been around since about 2010, and the CEO and a lot of the employees came from, or the early employees came from a former antivirus company. We have a lot of IT security pros helping over tens of thousands of organizations deal with social engineering and phishing across all different industries. You can see in the little pie chart there. But let's get on with our topic today. So a quick rundown. I'm going to look at giving a quick update on ransomware, just baseline everybody, looking at that chart there before, seeing folks that 50% of people are worried about ransomware and, of course, being breached and not knowing it. But we're going to talk about ransomware today, give everybody an update, talk about some best practices. As the bad guys that are creating the ransomware, they're evolving, and so our best practices are having to evolve with that. And then talk about whether or not you need to deal or no deal, and with regards to paying them or not paying them, and then look at different ways to assess your environments with regards to ransomware, whether you can be impacted or not, and then we'll do a short Q&A at the end. All right, so the ransomware update. And we heard some figures there before with regards to data breaches, but with ransomware attacks, the average cost to a business, if they get hit with ransomware, we're talking about $133,000. Those are certainly not line items that are in a budget for a lot of organizations. Even though people will say, well, we've got, up-to-date antivirus, 75% of those companies are getting hit. A lot of the ransomware that's out there isn't going to be detected unless it's been already discovered and the patterns have been created by the antivirus companies. So, 34% of the businesses, once they get hit with ransomware, it may take them a week or more to get either back their data, to get going again with their productions. And that's another thing that doesn't end up showing in your budget and your line items is, okay, in the event that you do get hit with ransomware, it's going to cost you this much to recover, but can we lose a week of productivity as well? And that ends up being a big concern and when that ends up coming through. So if we look at some of the, ransomware over the years, it started out where it was your computer's been locked, and then a lot of IT folks may remember WannaCry from several years ago. But I mean, even ransomware is impacting Android phones. I mean, this is actually a screenshot from a particular Android phone, and just getting encrypted. And so there's different flavors, and we're getting a lot more of the different types of ransomware coming out. Rather than just making your files unavailable, they're doing a lot more. So much so that ransomware is a service where this is something that you get impacted and they want you to go out and find 2 other companies to infect. And then when you get infected, then you get your decryption or your decryptor key so that you can decrypt your files and get using them again. So it's not a matter of just getting your system hit, but now they're going out and getting people to get other companies or other organizations encrypted as well. More recently, and this was just before Christmas, the Maze ransomware crew kind of took ransomware to a new level, so much so that if you get infected by their ransomware, they're actually going to release your information and your intellectual property and the data they've stolen to the public and make that available. So they're holding your data ransom. Give us the money or pay. Give us the money or we release your data. And so they're kind of taking that next step. Some of the other ransomware that's been seen out there recently, it's also disabling a lot of your services. And if you're in an industrial control system environment and they're disabling your processes on your systems that are controlling power plants or water treatment plants, that could be extremely problematic. It kind of takes it to that next level. And in this particular case with Maze, the Windows updates were installed, everything was up to date, and they still got hit. They're utilizing those exploits that are out there, which kind of takes our mode of thinking with ransomware no longer as just a lack of availability, but now it has to be considered a data breach. Whether folks were considering that beforehand or not, it was never really that to the forefront of a lot of people's minds that it was a data breach. It's like, oh, we got hit, almost like a drive-by attack. But in this case, they are now getting into the systems. They're taking their time. They're not coming in, dropping the malware to launch the ransomware. They're coming in, they're deleting backups, they may be installing additional malware or Trojans. They're stealing your data before they actually start the encryption. And then, like what we saw with Maze, they're holding it for ransom. They're going to leak it if you don't pay up. This can be extremely problematic if you're an organization that has a lot of PII information and they get a hold of that and looking to cause damage to your reputation. So a lot of things to be thinking about with the the evolving of ransomware that's coming out. I have this fun little comic here, which is interesting. You look at your home and all the different IoT devices that you have, everything from your vacuum to your fridge, their microwave, cameras, thermostats, all these different IoT devices. If they were to get impacted by ransomware, they could be sitting there going, well, we're not going to unlock your fridge door until you pay us. We're not going to work, clean up. We're going to continually run the vacuum or not run the vacuum, streaming information out of the camera unless you pay out. So the Internet of ransomware things could be a dangerous thing, but I don't think this is something that could be too far off, especially with the way we're seeing a lot of the ransomware attacks that are out there. All right, so I've claimed the sky's falling, Chicken Little. So let's talk about what we got to do to protect your systems. What do those best practices look like? Well, the first and foremost, of course, and this has always been talked about, a lot of people probably get tired of hearing it, but is to back up your data. And the response a lot of the times I hear is, we do back up. We do back it up. The problem is not enough testing is going on, and I have a feeling we might start seeing more of it. But essentially, the methodology of 3-2-1, utilize them either on premise, in cloud, with versioning, but also off network as well, and then test those backups. Because if you do get hit with ransomware, you're going to be putting that test procedure into play, and it's actually going to be needing to do it for real. But don't be just restoring particular files. Make sure that you are recovering those whole servers altogether. Secondly, a lot of people a lot of organizations consider cyber insurance. Make sure that the fine print's being read on that, because a lot of the time they may claim, well, not in the sense of, or not like a force majeure clause, where in the event that's an act of war, we're not going to be able to cover it. We've seen this before because we've had particular nation states, ones that were within the U.S., there are tense negotiations, and they come back and go, this was an act of war. This is not something that we can cover. So make sure within the cyber insurance, that you fully understand whether or not ransomware is covered. They won't pay the ransom, or they may just cover the recovery. They may not cover the cost of the actual ransom itself. I alluded to earlier with the different statistics, the different line items for the budget and downtime. You having those items in there, that budget for the event that you do get hit with ransomware, you've got that line item of costs. That might be something. And then, of course, whether or not you're going to be able to pay the money for the ransom. The other aspect, of course, is to train everyone. Make sure people are aware of what ransomware is, understand about phishing, spam emails, malware, social engineering, and have that in a type of interactive, engaging training program for your employees. Everybody from the CEO all the way down to your help desk and anybody else that's on the front lines working with customers. They want to make sure that they're aware of that, because they're the ones getting the emails that are coming in, and if they're going to be clicking on links, it's essentially going to be opening up your front door for access into that. So, as we've talked about some of the protective items, whether you're looking at cyber insurance, definitely your backups, training your people. Let's say the unfortunate day comes along and you are hit with ransomware and your servers are encrypted and you get that wonderful little note. Now the idea is, okay, do we deal or no deal? Do we pay or don't we pay? Last year, the FBI had a statement released regarding, you should not pay the ransom. And as we're starting to see, the criminals are getting more crafty with how they're doing their ransomware, and you want to make sure that if you are going to pay, that you're hopefully going to get the decryptor, but you may pay and you still may not got the decryption key. So there's those things to consider. By not, you can certainly make the decision not to pay, but then you have to go through and start recovering from backups if you've got that. But a lot of bad actors, a lot of those criminal groups that are out there talk to each other. And so if you get hit, and they may turn around and, another group may turn around and try and send ransomware your way through a phishing attack. So those are certainly some things to consider, is whether you're going to pay or not. So if you're going to not pay, now you're going to have to recover from backup. And hopefully you've got your backups. If you don't have your backup and you've lost everything, then you're starting all over, and that's an unfortunate situation to be put in. Whether or not your business can continue, that's dependent on the resiliency of the business itself. But there was a study towards the end of last year where it came out that 10% of businesses that got hit with ransomware ended up closing their doors. So 1 in 10. I'm sure those were probably small businesses that couldn't sustain being down for more than 3 days. And because of the ransomware took out their systems and their data, they couldn't do anything. But if you decide to recover from backup, got to restore, of course, from a recent backup. You may want to look at either trying to decrypt the files using a third-party decryptor. You can either do nothing or try and negotiate and pay the ransom. But usually there's a deadline that with those, with the ransomware that you have out there, whether they give you 48 hours or 72 hours. So decisions have to be made quite quickly, and then figure out what your next steps are going to be. So either way, when you decide to recover from backup, you've got to rid your computer of all the ransomware. You can't just do the restoration. You don't want to restore the data on top of the current operating system. You want to go through and wipe the machine and then do the restoration. You're not really going to sure if the ransomware that was installed on your system is still going to be there. You don't want to have it still on the system, or there could be additional malware that you don't know about that could still be sitting there. And so it's extremely important that you wipe the machine first, then do the restoration. So that way you're removing all doubt that there is any malware that is going to be on there. You can go through and try and decrypt it yourself. There are organizations, there's some free online tools that you can upload a file to, and they can send you a link back with a decryptor key, and you can use that to recover your files if it's available. And they don't have all the ransomware variants that are out there, but they've been able to decrypt several of them. So those are things to consider when you try to decrypt it yourself. So when you're going to send them, you want to send the decryptor folks the decryption key that or the files that you have. You need to want to make sure that you understand what type of ransomware you've been hit with. And so providing that kind of information is helpful. So with regards to the Decrypter websites, as I said already, a lot of them can help with your decryption. It's not 100% guaranteed. You've got to upload the data, you receive the key, and then hopefully decrypt. And again, once you go through and do that decryption, if you are successful in getting that key, once you get the files, if you haven't had a proper backup because you've had to go the decryption key method, again, you're going to want to wipe out the systems and then restore from that backup, because you're never going to know if there was additional payloads included with the original ransomware. So those are things that you need to consider in the event that you're able to effectively decrypt it. So all in all, let's say none of those decryption key doesn't work, you can't recover from your backups, you're going to take the plunge and try and pay the ransom overall. So they're going to give you the instructions, and it's going to be in a text file. They usually drop it into every folder that you have. It's pretty obvious. They want to make it as easy as possible so you can pay them. So then you have to figure out how much you've got to pay, because they're going to tell you in Bitcoin. They're going to tell you where it can be paid, and then of course you're dealing with a time frame, a very small time window on when you can pay. And if you've never purchased a Bitcoin wallet and you've never put money into it, there's a learning curve and a process that goes along with that as well. So if you're considering paying the ransom, you've got to start on day one to start figuring out how you're going to pay that. Even if you don't end up paying them, it's going to take a couple of days to go through the process to get everything set up, and then to effectively send them the money so that you can collect back the decryption key for your files. All right. So we've talked about ransomware itself. We've talked about what to do in the event you get hit. So let's look at some ways that you can kind of prevent internally and have your own internal assessments to see if you're susceptible to ransomware. So there's always the talk of training versus awareness versus compliance. Compliance is always a fun topic because a lot of different standards and regulations that are out there tell you to have some sort of cybersecurity training. But compliance essentially is just checking the box. And a lot of the times we see people doing that 30-minute presentation in a conference room with everybody. Maybe you get drinks and snacks, but that just meets that checkbox, and that it doesn't do a lot for your employees. Training is what's used for that compliance. However, training only goes so far. Training gets you where you bring people in a room and you educate them, and then you're assessing that knowledge to see if they've picked it up. For me, a lot of it comes down to awareness. Awareness is a behavioral. It's something that, for us, behavioral is you walk to the end of the street and you look to the left and you look to the right because you want to make sure there aren't any cars coming, because if you step out and you get hit, that's it, game over. Same thing, you want that awareness with the phishing emails, or with any type of email that comes in and has a link and there's something unusual about it. You don't want to be clicking on it because you want to have that awareness of understanding that there are phishing attempts going on, and you hover over the mouse over the link and you go, that doesn't look like a proper web address that's out there that I would want to click on. So, compliance and training and awareness, they all go hand in hand. But awareness is something that you take with you and is a part of who you are, and that's kind of the end goal is what you want to have. So looking at training, and here's the KnowBe4 Security Awareness Program. It's a cycle. It's not just a one-time, one and done. It is something where you go through, you train your people about phishing emails. You then attempt to fish. Well, you don't attempt. You fish them, and with the goal that people understand that what a phishing email is, and don't click on it, and then look at the results and see how the people have responded within the organization on the phishing attempts. A lot of the times, and we've done studies over the last several years, and across the board, it's anywhere between 20 and 30% of a phishing-prone percentage, basically, as you can see through the different industries. But it's always about 30% is where it starts out. When you start a campaign, you're going to have your 1 in 3 people that are going to click on the link, which, out of an organization of 30,000 people, that's 10,000 of your organization, right? So it's important that people are aware of what phishing emails look like and can take the proper actions with that to make sure that they don't affect your environment with phishing email by clicking on those links with ransomware or any type of malware breach. One of the things we've noticed is that over a year of continually phishing, this is not something where you just do one assessment a year and go, okay, great, check, we're done. This is something where you want to be going through and phishing your employees on a regular basis, whether that's once a month, once a week, once a day. You want to make sure that your people have that heightened awareness of the phishing attempts, not to a point of paranoia, but make it that they're aware of it and they have that heightened sense of it to be aware of it. And over a year, if you do that, the studies have shown that you go down from that 30% average to start down to about 2%. So while it's not 100% perfect, and I don't think there are too many products in security that are 100% perfect, but they all work together to kind of solve that problem that we have. This reduces that risk of your users so that they become your 8th layer of your OSI model to help you out as the human factor with all of it. Now, one of the things that we have, and this particular slide, it's the link on here, the knowbefore.com/resources. We have a ransomware hostage rescue manual that goes into further detail regarding some of the topics I've covered here this afternoon. I encourage you to check that out if you haven't read it, because it goes into a lot more detail on the information. We could go for 2 more hours talking about ransomware and recovery, but due to our short window today, just wanted to give you a high level to give you something to go check out and see as well. Secondly is our Ransomware Simulator. This is a free tool that's available on the website, and you install it. And I've actually run this on my machine at home as well, my own personal machine, and it basically goes through and checks to see how the impact would be on you if you were to be hit with ransomware. It doesn't use any of your own files. It downloads them itself, and it gives you the 16 different infection scenarios for ransomware and tells you how to go through and give you the results. And so you can go through and take the necessary steps after that. So the Ransomware Hostage Manual, the PDF, I encourage you to check that out. Check out this free tool and use it as well, and test it out on your systems within your own organization if it's allowed. Make sure that's clear. But one of the other things is we have plenty of other free IT security tools available on our KnowBefore website, plus a handful of other fantastic white papers written by other experts here. The 12 ways to hack two-factor authentication is a fun read as well, so I encourage you to check it out. And lastly, I'm just going to leave you with one little bit of a way to remember this presentation, as it'll stick in your brain, and that is, did you hear how the hackers got away from the police? Yeah, they ransomware. So I will leave it on that groaning of a note with everybody and open it up for questions.
Great presentation, James. I'm still chuckling at that joke. I enjoyed that one. Thank you. Thank you for a good joke. While we do some Q&A here, I'll bring up this poll question that just says, what additional information would you like about the KnowBefore solution? And you must have really, struck a chord here, James, because you got a lot of good feedback. Jim said that he's tried the Ransomware Simulator, and it's pretty awesome, in his words.
Cool.
Let's see. Kathy said, we use KnowBefore. It's a great service. Dan said, a big fan of KnowBefore. We use them, and they're fantastic. So lots of good feedback. There are some questions here. Let's see. First question that came in, Rodney's asking, with the extortion breaches, what prevents a hacker from coming back later and wanting more money to not release the data? Therefore, would companies just choose not to pay the ransom and deal with the fallout, not knowing if it would truly end? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so the extortionware, essentially, when they're wanting you to pay, but you're you're not able, whether or not you are able to pay or not able to pay. To prevent them from coming back in, a lot of the time is having to do a wipe of the systems. I mean, if they've gotten in once, that's that data breach. And so you're going to want to make sure that you wipe those systems. I mean, early on in my career, working in helping out with IT, when we would have our systems infected with malware or whatever, we would have it wiped. And people would say, but the antivirus picked it up. It's like, well, it did pick up what it knew about. It's what it didn't know. And that's the concern. And while it's a great impact to the resources of the IT department and having to restore machines, that is going to be the safest bet to prevent the bad guys from being able to come back in. The other thing is going to be checking to, have that root cause to understand how they got in. Was it through phishing? And if that's the case, security awareness, the new school security awareness training is going to help reduce that. Technology helps as well. And like I said, it's a combination of the multiple areas that are going to allow it to prevent it from coming back in. Any other questions?
Yeah, good point. Good point. Another question here, they're asking, has there been any published percentage on, how many companies pay versus how many companies don't?
Yeah, I got a number the other day. I was chatting with a colleague, and we've heard last year there was about 34% of the people paid. Now, of them that got their data back, it was in the 70 to 80% range that actually were able to get their data back after paying.
Okay.
So there's a good percentage that you can get your data back, but you want to make sure you're going through and restoring, getting your data recovered, and then wiping the systems again so that they don't have that. Because the bad guys could have created backdoors. You're going to have to review user accounts, make sure that they're actually legit accounts that have been created internally and not created by the bad guys for their own way to get back into your networks.
Okay. Jim is asking, does KnowBe4 have an official stance on whether it's worth paying or not?
Sorry, what was the question?
Jim is asking, does KnowBe4 have an official stance on whether it's worth paying the ransom or not?
We don't have an official stance on whether we recommend paying or not. I think our focus is more on, getting that education and training for your organization so that you don't fall to it and have to make that decision.
Okay. Matthew's asking, what attack method is most successful for ransomware? Is it phishing?
Yeah, 90% of the data breaches last year and with the ransomware came through phishing or spear phishing, where they were targeting the company and then sending a really convincing email, which just makes the folks click that link without really thinking through it.
Okay. Let's see. Another question here we had, and that is, I lost it. Okay, are there different types, or how do we know which type of ransomware we're most vulnerable to? Is there any way of telling that, or does it really matter?
Essentially, when the ransomware comes in, not necessarily. Usually when ransomware is coming in, they're coming in to infect your files. There are different variants of ransomware that they're using different types of encryption. But a lot of the time, when they're hitting you with ransomware, they've already gotten into your system, and so they've got the access that they need and the capability. Okay,
excellent. And so, if people want to get started with KnowBe4, what's the best way to do that? Just download the ransomware simulator and maybe learn about it from there, and then perhaps do a trial?
Yeah, exactly. That would be the best way. We've got plenty of fantastic folks here at KnowBe4 that would love to take folks through a demo and show them after they've gone through the ransom, take them through how to use the security awareness training tool. Okay, awesome. Cool.
Well, I think that's all the questions we have, or all the time we have for questions. There's actually a lot more questions. I'm going to put them there in the folder for you to, hopefully you can get back to those. We really appreciate you being on the event today. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
For more information on KnowBe4, of course, check out the Ransomware Simulator link that's right there in your handouts at the top, and also visit knowbe4.com. And now it's time for our first Amazon $500 gift card winner. That is going to John Stockman from Delaware. Congratulations, John Stockman from Delaware. All right, now it's my pleasure to introduce our next set of presenters on today's Megacast. I'm excited to introduce Kathleen Walker, Director of Product Marketing, Sven Reinhardt, Principal Product Manager, and Jamie Hines, Senior Product Manager at SolarWinds. Kathleen, Sven, and Jamie, are you there?
We're here.
Oh, excellent.
Hey,
Thanks for being on.
To be here as always.
Great to have you on again. I'll hand it over to Kathleen. Take it away.
All right. Thanks very much. And thank you for having us here. We're really looking forward to talking to you a little bit more about team accountability and how that factors into your overall security presence and your security position as a company. Here's what myself and Jamie and Sven look like, just so you can put faces to voices as we're going through. In terms of an agenda, again, we wanted to talk to you a little bit more about how you can improve your security posture through some focused efforts around team accountability. And parts of that include not only recognizing suspicious activity, also securing access and understanding your access and permissions within your environment. And then we're going to go through a little bit of actual hands-on how you can use technology to do better at both. So just a little bit of context here. I think most people would agree that almost all organizations are vulnerable to insider threats. And insider threats can mean a couple of things. A lot of times, the thing that pops to mind initially is a bad actor within your organization that has malicious intent for whatever reason and actively pursues a goal to harm your company. But oftentimes what we find is that more people are focused on just the well-meaning employee making a mistake, or even your IT partner in crime just thinking that something will have a small or minimal or no impact when actually it has a larger impact on your environment. So between all of that, this particular survey, it said that 90% of employees or customers are feeling vulnerable to insider threats, but really that should probably be rounded up to near 100. When you believe what most of the enablers are to that, a lot of times what bubbles to the top is actually not understanding who has access to what. Because I think a lot of times there are processes for onboarding to say this person in this role needs access to these things. But over time, things are often added to that, and for good reason most of the time. But then over time, the scope creep happens. People have access to more things than they actually need, and therefore your organization is more at risk if, for instance, that account were compromised. So that's a very common scenario. And then what types of insiders pose the biggest security threat? Regular employees, of course, were number one, but the interesting part of this survey is a very close second was the privileged IT users and admins. And again, generally speaking, these are good employees with excellent intentions, but they also make mistakes. So your user, a common mistake might be, I have so many accounts and so many passwords to remember, I'm going to make them all the same. Well-meaning, but raises your overall risk. Your IT compatriot might just, think they can have a real quick change that's not going to have an impact to the environment, but then either break something or leave the door open for somebody that might have malicious intent. And then finally, obviously, there are a lot of types of data that are most vulnerable, but you really want to focus in on that confidential and privileged information to keep that safe. So securing the weakest link means not just your users, it also means your tech tiers, and it also means the process that can make things safer over time. So each of those employees needs to understand how they impact the overall risk to the company and the process should help them define and guide their actions to minimize that risk as well. So under suspicious activity, just to get more specific, what we're looking to do is understand when suspicious activity is happening. So capture information about that so you can dive in and do more analysis. Monitoring for unauthorized changes, oftentimes this is a precursor to a larger security event. Maybe it's taking out of commission some of your defenses that are in place. Maybe it's widening access to a specific account that's been compromised. There are a lot of different scenarios. Performing program correlation. Oftentimes a security event, there's not just one particular thing that'll say, hey, this is a security event. It's a combination of several different things that happen in a certain time frame that put together give that context to say we might be in trouble. And then, if possible, respond in real time with automated responses. There's certain things that happen that you know shouldn't be happening in your environment. Those are the kind of things that you can go ahead and set up automated actions to keep yourself safe. And then in terms of securing access, obviously you need to understand over time what users have access to what and how is that changing. And that can be really difficult to get your hands around if you're trying to go directly into something like Active Directory. So having a tool that will help look at that from a variety of different angles, understanding the scope of access for each person, how it's changed over time and why can be extremely helpful. And when it comes down to it, oftentimes you're going to be asked to prove that you can do those things when you have a regulatory body coming in and saying you need to be compliant with these standards. It's not just having the controls in place, it's also being able to prove that they're actually doing their job. So the things that we're going to show you today are a couple of products within our wider security portfolio. One of them is Security Event Manager. And what this product is, it's an affordable theme solution. A lot of times what our customers have told us is that they want to have more security controls in place, but they just can't afford some of the wider solutions that are out on the market. So we're really close to our audience. We're really close to that IT administrator, and we wanted to build a tool that allowed more companies to lower their risk through this functionality. So what we can do here is offer them a tool that, through correlating logs across a variety of sources, allows them to detect threats with less manual effort, respond faster to minimize the risk of the overall situation, achieve compliance readiness. That's a heavy lift in terms of just time and effort. Making that easier is obviously going to be better for the IT folks in general. And then maintaining continuous security, so being able to watch over time what's happening. And since there's definitely not a solution where one product can cover all your security bases, another product we have, Access Rights Manager, actually goes in and tries to help minimize your risk from incorrect access to sensitive information, etc. So it'll allow you to go in and improve your overall security posture by minimizing the impact of those insider threats. Also has a great compliance story, because that's very often something that regulatory bodies are asking people to do now, is prove that you know who has access to the sensitive information, oftentimes customer data. Easily manage those user permissions, enhance the productivity of not only the IT teams, but also the teams that you support by allowing them to determine who's the right people to access their information. And then, again, just make it easier to keep yourself at a better security and lower risk position by making the functionality easier to use. So that's talk so far, but now it's time to actually see how some of these things work. So I'm going to turn it over to Jamie, who's going to tell you a little bit more about the Security Event Manager product.
Thanks, Kathleen. Hi, everyone. My name is Jamie Hines. I'm a Senior Product Manager here at Sullivan's. And as Kathleen mentioned, we have our Security Event Manager tool, which is essentially like another set of eyes monitoring each and every event that's happening on your network. So as Kathleen mentioned, when it comes to monitoring, let's say, suspicious activity, the solution will collect event logs, be it Windows logs, syslogs from your workstations, your servers, your network devices, etc., and can give you a great insight into exactly what's happening on your network. So on my screen at the moment, you can see all the events as they appear on the system, and it's all very much in real time, or as near to real time as you possibly can get. Meaning that if someone does something on your network, be it an insider threat or maybe there's traffic coming from the outside, you will see that immediately in this console here. So there's essentially very, very little delay in terms of when an event happens and when it's going to be in this system. So in here we have all the events, but it's going to be very possible for any human to keep track of each and every event that happens in their environment. So there's a number of ways we get around that scenario. So the first one is we have lots of filters out of the box. For example, if we're looking for maybe suspicious activity, Kathleen mentioned authentication, who's trying to access what, Down here we have a number of filters that will help you hone in on authentication attempts. So for example, we look at, say, logons. I can now see here in a live mode what failed authentications are currently taking place. However, we can even go a step further. Rather than looking at all these events, you can rely on a dashboard here, and that will give you the ability to monitor for those same logon failures, but in a nice visual format. So if you, for example, can see this particular user has a huge number of logon failures, that could indicate there could be a script on your network trying to guess that user's passwords. Maybe it could be some sort of service account that's trying to authenticate to something but getting locked out. But it certainly warrants investigation. And without having a tool to kind of visualize exactly what's happening and the volume of which it's happening, it's going to be very hard for you to identify those suspicious authentication attempts. Even more so, you can see the administrator has quite a high number of logon failures, which would even be more of a cause for concern. So you can drill down from the dashboard to these events, and you can now see all the events in question. So one important aspect of a log monitoring tool is going to be the normalization of those events. So I'm sure some of you are familiar with event logs in terms of all the different formats. And that can be a real challenge when it comes to dashboarding, when it comes to searching, and when it comes to correlation of those event logs. So what our solution here does in Secure Event Manager is we normalize each and every event that we receive into a kind of a predefined taxonomy. Meaning that regardless if there's a logon failure onto your firewall, so say someone's trying to make an unusual change, or if it's on a Windows machine or a Linux machine, we'll display it as a user logon failure. So it just avoids you having to get familiar with all the different log formats and trying to make sense of different languages used by different vendors, etc. You're going to have a nice, easy to read, parsed set of information here, rather than having to focus on a raw logs and trying to decipher information from those raw logs. So some of the other filters that we have here relate to change management too. So again, Kathleen mentioned unauthorized changes. That could mean is someone adding a user to the admins group, for example. So in here you can see this user was added to the main admins group, and I can see the source account was the administrator. So again, that could raise a question mark. Why is the administrator adding this user to the main admins group? Is that authorized? Is it potentially a mistake? Or is someone getting excessive permissions that they shouldn't be, possibly for malicious reasons? So be able to track that unauthorized changes. Equally, that could mean if you're collecting syslogs, let's say from a firewall, and someone's making a change to an ACL, maybe allowing unusual traffic into your network or even out of your network, that could warrant investigation too. So it's not just Active Directory changes that we're monitoring for. It could be potentially changes made to your network devices, or even as far as software being installed on your network. So we don't have any samples here. If someone launched, let's say, a setup.exe or tried to install an MSI, you can again be alerted to that here. So it's not just configuration changes, but also is there some software trying to be installed on the network that maybe wasn't authorized too. Kathleen also mentioned the number of devices that have access to sensitive information. And I think one of the bane of a lot of IT pros' existence is USB devices. So the amount of times we hear from our customers whereby employees find a USB stick in the parking lot, or they bring a device in from home, or they buy a cheap device on eBay that could have malware on it even as soon as they buy it. So from a USB standpoint alone, trying to monitoring who's plugging devices, who's plugging USB devices into which devices on your network. Even further, who's copying files or who's creating files on those USB devices. From an accountability point of view, it's going to be very important that your IT team knows exactly what data is on those USB devices, what devices are being used, and exactly who's using those devices. And that's something we can monitor through event logs too. So that's kind of some of the filtering. You can also do a live filter as well. So if you feel there is maybe an active attack taking place, or you want to monitor one particular user, say if I keep it simple, we just see everything what's happening in terms of administrator right now. In a live environment here, I can see there's some logon failures. I can see suddenly admin is locked out, and I can scroll through here and I can see all other logs that contain the word admin. So that's an audit events there too. You can also do a historical search. So if I want to search for a particular keyword or a particular event, I can do historical search there too. So the whole idea is it's much easier to interact with your logs if they're all in normalized format, a real-time stream, and you can do a live filter, and you can also do historical search. Without centralized log management, that's going to be very difficult to do, given all your logs are either residing on individual machines, maybe going to a syslog server that doesn't have Windows events on it. So having a centralized solution makes it a lot easier to monitor exactly what's happening on your network and any unusual activity that might be taking place. So one other very powerful feature of the tool is the ability to do correlation rules, as Kathleen mentioned too. So it's one thing to be able to see all those events in a nice dashboard or a normalized stream or searching those, but realistically it's going to be very hard to do that 24/7 and monitor each and every event. So for that reason, we have our correlation engine too. So that's kind of really where the set of eyes comes into play, in terms of we're going to monitor each and every event that comes in, correlate that against a set of rules that we include out of the box, or equally you can create your own custom rules, and then create actions based on that, or create an alert such as an email alert based on that. So if we take an example here, let's say your DBA is making a change to your database. So you have a SQL database, maybe someone's trying to modify a table, maybe change the schema, or maybe grant access to a user that shouldn't have access to that particular sensitive table, for example. So in the correlation rule here, we can see if there's an event that comes in and it's basically part of our list of potentially changed states in the database, we can then perform an action based on that. So we could potentially, in this case, just send an email message to the sysadmin to say someone has performed a change on the database that mightn't have been authorized. Equally, as I mentioned a minute ago, in terms of the USB monitoring, if we look at detaching an unauthorized USB device. So within this product, you can easily do things like create let's say, a whitelist of USB devices. So there might be a device that you've given to your employees, they're encrypted, they're from a known vendor, they're devices you trust. You can then have that as a list of authorized USB devices. But you can then create a rule and say, if there's an attached device and it's a USB device, and it's not part of my whitelist of authorized USB devices, I don't want to take an action. And this time I can go a lot further than just send an email alert. I can now say detach USB device. So we'll actually block that USB device on that machine, and also send a pop-up message to the user to say the use of USB devices is against company policy. And that message can be as pleasant or not so pleasant as you wish. And then from there, you can also send an email alert just to let the admin know that this particular user inserted a USB device that wasn't warranted. There's just two examples of correlation rules. I think I heard the previous presenter talk about phishing attacks, and they're all so prevalent these days in terms of a user clicking on a link in an email alert, and suddenly you have maybe ransomware installed on your network, or maybe you've traffic going to a command and control server or some unwanted URL. So we also have threat intelligence included in this product. So we will correlate all the IP addresses that we're seeing in your logs, and if any of those IP addresses appear in a blacklist online, we can then alert you to that. So if a user does click on a link within a phishing email, we can then alert you to any traffic, let's say leaving a workstation, going to a server known for ransomware, malware, phishing attacks, etc. So you can then either simply send an alert, or even potentially block that IP address. So you can actually stop that communication to that bad known IP address from a device on your network, and potentially limit the impact that phishing attack might have had. So this is just some of the use cases. There's a lot more we could discuss, but I certainly hope you get a good flavor of just some of the types of activities that we can monitor and potentially prevent using the Security Event Manager. So if it's okay with you, Sven, I'm going to pass it over to you for a demo of our Access Rights Manager.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jamie. So hi, I'm Sven Reinhardt. I'm the product manager for Access Rights Manager, and I have the honor to introduce you to some use cases for the Access Rights Manager. And let me share quickly my screen with you. So you should now see my Access Rights Manager screen. And let's start with the first use case. So let's assume you need to answer the questions who has access where, or who a specific user has access to. So I simply go to the resources view where I see all the resources connected to the Access Rights Manager, and I search for the specific user, so for example for Emily. And then I get back all objects that could be a match. So at this stage, I would want to look for Emily employee. I simply click on the user, and then the system generates me a scenario. And in this scenario, I see all the resources the user has access to. So for example, if I now open the file server object, I see the folders the user has access to. For example, if I go to development, you see also on the right side the permissions that are given there, and you see with the green arrow what kind of permission the user actually has. So what we see here is that Emily has read and execute rights, and if I open this, I see also that she got this right via a group, the group organization development read and execute, which is basically the resource group granting the permissions. Another way to find out that information is, of course, just let me close the scenario. For example, we can go via a report. So we could also ask the same question. So where has a user or group access? For that, I would select the user again. And then I would also integrate everyone access, authenticated users, or domain users. And then I would go to the path. So for example, I would say I'm just interested in the file server. And then I can go to other things like directory levels to resolve. And then I simply choose what kind of format I want, that I want to start it manually, or even I could schedule how often the report is generated and executed. For this case, I just generate it now once. And the report, by the way, is generated based on the data we collect and transfer to our database. And then we can simply show the report. I guess this is not working now, because you don't see that. So basically, the PDF is generated and shared as a PDF, apparently. So you can send it as an email attachment, or you can save it, for example, on the local file server, or let's say on a local, wherever you execute a client. Okay, good. So we get this information, who has access where. Now, the other question is, how is the permission set, for example, or given on a certain folder? So for example, let's search for a folder like flyer. And again, you see the directories that are a good match, flyer in this case. And we are directly guided to the directory flyer. And as you can see, it's pre-selected. We see on the right side the permissions that are given there. So we see that full control is given, modify and read and execute. And now we can see below even the users that have the corresponding rights here. And you see also here a number. This number says how often granted. And if I, for example, look here again for Emily employee, I see she got permissions here in 3 different ways. So I can even switch here to modify. Then I see who has modify rights. It is Emily again in 2 ways. I open it and I see she has direct permission and one via the resource group, which is the intended way. So the direct permission is not nice. So I can quickly see how many paths a user has permissions granted. This is especially reasonable and helpful if you are asked to reduce the permissions given on a specific folder. So for example, HR or whatever. Sensitive folders are good for that. So let's assume we have now the view on this flyer folder. The question is also, what is with the folders below the flyer folder? So if I now go to the flyers folder once again, and as I see here in this window, all subfolders that are located under the flyer folder, which have different permissions. And if I click on one of them, I see a comparison between the flyer folder and the folder below. what has changed. So for example, in this way, I see that Emily has been restricted, that she has no modifier permission on the subfolder. And that is the difference from a permission perspective. And I see also differences in the inheritance from different permissions. And so I can quickly get a glance on how the permissions are set and where the problems are. Good. So now let's go a little bit to identify and manage risks. So let's go to the dashboard, for example. Here we can see, for example, groups that are in recursions, or we see also empty groups or users that are disabled. Simply click here and you have this list and you can also act on these. Let's go back to groups in recursion. Double click here and you see all these groups here, and then we can go into the accounts view, which is a graphical representation of the Active Directory. And here you can walk through graphically through the Active Directory and see how these groups relate to each other. And you can also use them to quite quickly identify problems that might occur here. And realize then how to solve them. For example, these are now in a recursion. This is also the symbol here, and you can resolve them by modifying the permissions. So simply go here to change group memberships. And then you see is a direct member of these other groups and has the following members, and you could then just remove them. The other interesting things are, for example, unresolved SIDs. So you can quickly resolve unresolved SIDs. So let me try to share my other window with you. So that's the should be the web client that you should now see, hopefully. Okay, and here in the web client, we have also here the opportunity to analyze, for example, direct permissions on directories. And afterwards, you see quickly a list of all users that have direct permissions on, for example, the file server. You can quickly use that view, for example, to group it by the corresponding right. And you could also group it perhaps by, let's say, the path. And then you can quickly go through it and see, for example, management. These users have modifier access to that, and you can simply select them and easily remove the access control entries there. What you need always to do is with ARM, you need to enter a command here. So, for example, you can reference a ticket or whatever, and then execute the action. Okay, so that's basically it in the web client. For, of course, the other things like compliance, it's also important to have, of course, a logbook. And this logbook holds each and every operation that were done with and outside, with ARM and outside of ARM. So, for example, if we can quickly go now to a folder like Human Resources and double-click here, you are directly in the logbook and you see every action that had been done on this file server. You can even go on users where you have the same. So you see the complete life cycle of each object in your environment, and you know at every time what's happening to each of these objects. So for example, you see here the user has been created, which permissions he got, and also the descriptions that were entered, and all of the different steps it was part of. Okay, so that was it from my side.
Great demo, Sven. Sorry, go ahead, Kathleen.
Oh, no, go ahead. I was just going to say thank you as well. So I know that we're getting up towards time, so I can just, if you want to, There we go. Just a reminder, with SolarWinds, we're really focused in on, listening to the people that are using their problem or our products and solving kind of complex IT problems for them in an affordable way. So that's how our focus when all of our products are developed. We really want to make sure you get the right level of functionality for an affordable price so we can help all companies kind of lower their overall risk. And we can certainly jump to Q&A. I think we also have some polls as well. I'm not sure what order we should do those in. There we go.
Yeah, let's bring up this poll question while we do our first question from the audience. The poll question on the screen is, would you be interested in any of the following resources, specifically related to the Access Rights Manager, a demo, or pricing for new or additional licenses? We'll just leave that up while we do our first question, and that is actually from David. He's asking about ARM. Does ARM allow for user self-service and workflow, for example, making requests for permissions? Is that possible today?
Yes, it is. So we can have data owners that are responsible, for example, for folders or for AD groups, and they can then, via workflow, grant or reject access to these.
Okay, awesome. Another question Kumar is asking, can SolarWinds monitor SAN storage, and if so, is it agentless? I'm not sure if that was related to today's presentations, but I don't know if anyone on the call knows the answer to that one. If not, we can get back to him.
Yeah, we have it's called the Storage Resource Monitor product, and that can monitor performance of your storage arrays. It uses SMIS, so it typically doesn't require an agent. That's called Storage Resource Monitor. The product I showed, called Security Event Manager, does have the ability to collect events from storage arrays too, if it's more the event monitoring side of things they're interested in.
Okay, awesome. And I brought up the second poll question here. That is, would you be interested in any of the following resources, specifically a full SIEM or Security Event Manager demo, or pricing and licensing information for Security Event Manager? So let's see, another question here. Chandra is asking, how does SolarWinds stack up with, I'll just say, the competition? With there's multiple, security solutions out there. What do you feel really makes you all unique in the market?
So one thing we've actually focused on recently is kind of integrating with other tools. So in terms of one thing we introduced in SEM recently was how do we forward log data to those other solutions. So we understand that in a lot of companies they have more than just one SIEM. They could have a large enterprise SOC that's using an alternative SIEM solution, but they might have, let's say, our solution in, let's say, remote offices. So one thing we've done recently is added log forwarding capabilities to help us integrate with those other solutions and complement them essentially.
Okay, nice. And then let's see, another question here. I'll just bring this up while we do a few more questions from the audience. And this is the question we ask after every one of the presentations. Just what additional information would you like based on the presentation today? So another question here that came in, they're asking about, does ARM allow you to automatically disable user accounts after a certain number of inactive days? Is that possible?
So we have a scenario with Analyze and Act where we can show when a user is inactive for how many days. The only thing that is not working is that we automatically deactivate them. What we can do is we can analyze who are these accounts and can also run a script, for example, or simply deactivate them or delete them or whatever. But not, unfortunately, not automatically.
Okay. Good answer. Another question here about Security Event Manager. Can you deploy this into the cloud?
Absolutely, yeah. So, there's great flexibility when it comes to the deployment. You can deploy it as a virtual appliance on premises, or you can also deploy our appliance on Azure and AWS too.
One more final question I think we have time for, and that is, for Security Event Manager, how's the licensing model? What's the licensing model for that?
Sure. We're a little bit different from other scenes out there in that we license based on the number of nodes you're sending logs from. So a node could be a server, a workstation, a network device, etc. So we don't do it based on, let's say, the volume of information you ingest. It's based on the number of devices that you're sending logs from.
Okay, I like that, yeah. That's very flexible. All right. Well, that's all the time we have for questions. Kathleen, Sven, Jamie, great presentation. Thank you so much for being on the event today.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
Bye.
For more information on SolarWinds, check out their handout that's available for download there in your audience console. That's about the Access Rights Manager. And, of course, visit SolarWinds.com and give these solutions a try. I believe there's trials available for just about every SolarWinds product out there, so make sure you check those out. And now it's time for our next Amazon gift card winner. That's going out to Christine Son from California. An Amazon $500 gift card going to Christine Son from California. Congratulations. And after this next presentation, we'll start announcing our grand prize winners. And with that, it's my pleasure to introduce the next presenter on today's Megacast. That is Mr. David Green, Chief Revenue Officer at Fortanix. David, are you there?
I am, David. Good morning to you. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being on. Take it away.
All right, excellent. Well, everybody, thank you for your time here, and thank you for joining us on the program today. Excited to share with you what we're doing here at Fortanix. For this next segment, I want to talk about data protection, and specifically, how do we make data protection pervasive across our organizations and infrastructures? In the digital world, protection is the cornerstone of trust with customers, with partners, with employees, with suppliers. But what we're seeing happening is these carefully constructed tools and practices are colliding with the volumes of data that are exploding and the general move to the cloud. And what we thought of as a solved problem now is becoming overwhelmed by what happens going forward. So for today, there's really three things I want to cover. I want to give you a brief look at the current state of data protection, kind of specifically what's changed and why this has become so challenging. And then I want to introduce you to Fortanix and what we're doing with our solution. And then finally, I really want to spend the bulk of the time, the largest block of the time, walking through how we can apply the technology to some of the data protection challenges that they may be facing. Now, Fortanix is not a company most of you have heard of. We are a California-based security company building next-generation tools for data protection. And really, the design and what we're trying to do is give you tools that let you unlock the power of your most valuable data. And we can really only put data to work when it's safe. And so if we can protect the data across its life cycle, when it's being used, when it's being stored, when it's in transit, and we can protect it regardless of its location, then we have the ability to actually put data to use and realize its full value. And that's what we're going to try and focus on and drive here today. So, first, let's start with kind of what's the current state of data protection that you may be facing, you may be dealing with, and specifically, why is this so challenging? Why has this become hard? Well, let's keep in mind that the gold standard for data protection is encryption. If we encrypt the data, we don't have to worry about it. It can live wherever it is. It'll be fine. It'll be safe. And the traditional method for encryption is to use some sort of specialized hardware to generate a key that's used to protect that, encrypt that data, effectively put it in its own little safe deposit box where it's nice and safe. This has been the way we've been doing it for decades. There may be software versions of this, hardware versions of it, but the methodology is fundamentally the same. Well, when I talk to customers about how that's working for them today, they often describe their data protection scheme as looking more like this. While it seems all nice and neat and orderly to just protect these data in discrete buckets and discrete categories, it's not scaling. And the reason behind that's pretty simple. The volume of data that we're being asked to protect and asked to care for is literally exploding. We started with our first zettabyte of data just a few years ago. Hit roughly in 2020 here just about 40 zettabytes, and soon will be 5x that by 2025. And that data literally is all over the world in terms of where it's being generated, where it's being stored, and where it needs to be used. And so that nice, neat package we had to protect and encrypt our data now suddenly becomes this overwhelming volume of places where data needs to live and be taken care of. And just to make this a little more complicated, we're now shifting where that data resides. Most of our policies around protecting our data have all been designed around data center models. But with more than half of that data now living in public cloud environments, where arguably the data needs even more protection than it's had before in our own environment where it was completely under control, we've now got to figure out a new set of challenges to deal with. Effectively, public cloud just replicates the challenge that we're seeing in our own environment, and now those masses of data that needs to get protected are literally all over the world. And with that then comes the complexity of managing managing the keys for this, managing the protection for all this. And so now we come to the question, which is, so now what? What's the next answer, and what do we want to do for it? Well, this is where Fortanix can help. The Fortanix solution, let me give you a brief overview of what we're doing here. The Fortanix solution is really designed to deliver cloud-scale data protection. The core product and the core technology we've developed is what we call our self-defending key management system. And what this is really intended to be is a unified platform for data protection. What we want to do is we want to give you one pane of glass, one place of management, one place of control, where you can be managing encryption of your data, managing the keys that are used to encrypt that data, managing tokenization of sensitive information, managing secrets that may be used by development and application teams. We do that all within one unified, integrated application, one point of management. We've developed that as a technology that can be used to provide these services for on-premises applications and data sets, as well as cloud-based applications and data sets. We built this on hardware-grade security. So for those of you who are in this space, the FIPS 140.2 Level 3 certification is the gold standard here of what needs to be in place for hardware security. This is the grade used by the military to protect their sensitive information, and then the ability to actually integrate back to your legacy environments. And then we're going to overlay all of this with a cloud and application-friendly front end through our API set. It's going to make it easy for developer teams, for DevOps teams to get the services they need to protect their data and to use data wisely regardless of where it may reside. You see the picture on the right there, just an illustration of what the solution looks like. At the center there, the screen you see is our software application providing those unified set of services that is running on a set of Fortanix appliances that provide you that hardware-grade security or hardware-grade protection, and then access through a complete set of APIs. And again, RESTful APIs for the DevOps and cloud teams, cryptography APIs for legacy applications, database application-specific APIs for different environments. All really trying to enable you to create a central hub and a central point from which you can run data protection services across your environment. Now, while the Fortanix solution may not be familiar to you, it has become familiar to some of the big customers around the world that are working with us. And I'll talk more about some of the projects we're doing with these people as we go through the rest of the conversation today. But we're seeing companies like PayPal and Vanguard and Adidas working with us as they try and evolve their infrastructure to be more cloud-centric, to be more application-centric, to move more quickly, and integrate data protection practices in that along the way. Fortanix also has the privilege of being part of the Confidential Computing Consortium, an industry consortium put together by Intel, Microsoft, Google, other players that are together looking at new ways in which we can provide secure environments for computing going forward in this new, very dynamic digital world. And we finally also have the support of some key strategic partners in the marketplace. Intel, whose technology is central to what we do, Equinix, who offers the Fortanix product as their smart key service to customers, IBM, who's offering their Data Shield product built on Fortanix technology, and finally the partners in the national defense community that are looking for new solutions to protect our country's most valuable assets. One of the reasons these companies are interested in Fortanix and have chosen the Fortanix solution is because of some of the enabling technologies we put in place that make this all possible. Three key ones that are behind the solution. First is Intel SGX. SGX is an extension to the Intel processors. Typically, data protection has been done through specialized hardware devices that were unique to a particular vendor. What Intel instead has integrated this notion of hardware protection, hardware security into the core processor architecture. Now with the ability to create a secure enclave within the chip itself. It gives us a place to perform operations, to encrypt and protect data, to store sensitive information. All that can now be done on the processor chips. And as Intel propagates this technology across its product line, this will be possible to do with any and every processor in the world, really supporting a pervasive model for data protection. So that's the first piece of the technology. The second one there in the middle, the cloud managed infrastructure, is we've learned from what's happened in other parts of the data center, and rather than managing data protection as a physical asset or as a physical device, let's instead think of data protection as being associated with the data, and therefore needs to travel with the data, and therefore needs to be able to be managed wherever the data may be. And so the idea of cloud management says let's have one console, one central place of management from which we can establish our policies, establish the behavior we want to have happen from different data users, keep an entire audit log of how that data is used, how keys are accessed, when encryption is happening, what is being done, all from a single point. And then finally, on the right there, data protection is only as good as if it's being used. Too many organizations have put in place complex data protection procedures that are promptly avoided by other teams in the organization, particularly the application teams that are chartered to go very fast in developing new applications, delivering new functionality to customers. And so in a DevOps world, if we want the DevOps teams in particular to be working with proper data protection procedures, we've got to speak their language. And that's where the API set that we've made available to Fortanix comes into play, and specifically having the RESTful APIs that work together there. So those three enabling technologies really are what's allowed Fortanix to establish this position with some of the largest companies in the world as a provider of their data protection capabilities. And to just break it down a little bit compared to some of the other solutions you may be familiar with in the marketplace, what we're really trying to do here is to bring together the benefits of hardware security with the simplicity that's been typically associated with software-based solution. So Fortanix is going to be the only data protection solution that's going to bring together in one platform this broad set of capabilities around managing encryption keys, providing encryption services, tokenization, secrets. Like the hardware solutions at Talos, at Gemalto, and Cypher that your organizations likely have somewhere running in the data center, we're going to offer that same level of certified hardware security and the ability to securely execute application logic within protected environments. At the same time, though, we're also going to borrow the best features of the new kind of software-only solutions like HashiCorp Vault, where we're going to give you those APIs that the DevOps teams are comfortable with and know how to use. We're going to give you a solution that can run across cloud environments. So as applications are moving back and forth across environments, as containers are being spun up, as VMs are being added, you want the data protection to be able to live with that. Like the software solutions, Fortanix can provide that. We also paid attention to the technology and the business side. So we offer a pricing model that is flat, that lets you charge license based on the infrastructure you're protecting, not on the number of keys, the volume of data, or number of transactions. So a very clean, easy model for that. All built on industry standard technology as described from Intel. And then the ability to integrate back to what you may have as a way of investment protection. So that's kind of the package what we're trying to offer with the Fortanix solution. So I hope that gives you a kind of a brief idea of what we're doing. What I really want to talk about, though, for the next few minutes is, what you can do with this, and what are the practical applications of data protection. And while we're getting started on that, I wanted to put up a polling question there. Thank you, David. Hopefully, as I've been talking here this morning, you've been thinking about what some of the data protection challenges may be that exist in your organization. And I'll be touching on a few of those in the next few minutes. But we'd be interested in kind of your reactions as to, which of the problems listed here are problems that you're facing. Are you trying to figure out how to secure data that may be living in the public cloud? Do you have databases that need to be managed and you're struggling with managing the keys for that? Are your development teams looking for new solutions around secrets management? Are you trying to put in place a kind of a more consistent enterprise-wide encryption mechanism? I mean, these are all big and meaningful challenges that exist in the world today that you may be dealing with. And looking at the polling results here, it looks like we've got, as we typically see, strong demand around trying to deal with the public cloud environments, and at the same time trying to think more broadly about encryption across the enterprise. Well, actually, so that's a great starting point. Then let me take a first look at securing data in the public cloud. Really, the idea here is, as I move data and applications to the public cloud, how do I retain control of that data while it's in the public cloud, right? We don't necessarily want the keys that literally are the keys to the kingdom living in the same place as the data itself. And so what we try and do with our solution is we allow a separation of the data from the keys. So manage your keys that give access to the data with the Fortanix solution. Let the data live and run in a public cloud environment. So this way, when you're using confidential data on a cloud platform, you still know that you've got control of the keys themselves that are going to give access to that. Our great example of this is the work we've done with PayPal. Our friends at PayPal were up on stage at the Google Next conference a few weeks ago talking about the work they've done with that. PayPal is a major user of public cloud infrastructure. I think we're all familiar with PayPal as a business in terms of their transaction business and payment volume they process. As part of their compliance, they wanted a hard separation between the management of the keys that they would retain control of and the storage and operation, the storage of the data and operations of the applications that would take place in GCP. And so through the work that we've done with GCP, we at Fortanix have done with GCP and with PayPal, PayPal now has the ability to really turn on and off access in real time to the data and applications that lives in the Google platform, giving them complete control of those keys and making it possible for them to move additional workloads into cloud environment, even highly sensitive workloads in the cloud environment, knowing that they never give up control. The models are a little different when you look at other cloud providers, but certainly similar capabilities are available in Azure and AWS to generate keys to the Fortanix solution, import and use those keys within your cloud environment, and use that to support your cloud migration and your cloud journey. So first use case there to think about, it looked like one that many of you are doing with yourselves in your environments. A second use case that was a little less popular in the poll, but I think still one that may comes up, is around database management. This is a project a problem we actually solved for Vanguard, a name you also likely know. Databases have gotten pretty good at protecting data within the databases, but each database does it a little bit differently. And as our data volumes explode, the number of databases typically explodes with that. And when we're dealing with literally thousands of databases, how are we going to manage the keys across all of those? The goal here with Fortanix is to provide a central place of management for the keys that are being used by all of your databases. And that could be Oracle, SQL Server, MongoDB, kind of whatever the major databases are that you're using, one place to store and manage the keys. Generate the keys, manage the keys, audit the keys, all from one location. Still going to rely on the encryption capabilities provided by the databases themselves, but providing a central way to manage that, and ensuring the high level of performance that you need when there's literally thousands of databases running in the environment. Again, something to consider as data volumes continue to grow within your environments. Secrets management is one that we're seeing more emerging as a problem. It's actually a conversation we don't have as often with the security. I don't have as often with the security teams, but I always have with application teams. Because typically the application teams, as they're trying to look at cloud deployment of those applications, are trying to figure out where am I going to store the passwords or the secrets that are part of application operations. When the application needs to log into the database, where is it going to get the password for that? Where am I storing the API keys that are going to let applications talk to each other? And so in that model, our ability to do secrets management in the Fortanix solution becomes really important. This is all integrated into the API server within the Kubernetes cluster, using Java Web Tokens for authorization. You see here on the slide the workflow that happens between this. But providing an API-based framework by which an application developer can go and securely get the credentials they need, their application needs, for the application to go operate in an environment. And this is a project we're working on with a number of companies right now, including a very large software provider that's implementing a customer-facing cloud platform using these capabilities. Okay. Let me highlight one more for you here. This notion of data protection as a service. This was the one in the poll, our second highest ranking one in the poll feedback that you gave a few minutes ago. Really, sometimes we find organizations that are saying, you know what, I've got such a hodgepodge of encryption capabilities and data protection capabilities that have grown up over the years. I just want a clean start. And instead of having these multi-vendor solutions, I want to have a consistent single point where all of my applications and all my users can go to receive data protection services and encryption services. And that's what we refer to as data protection as a service. It involves putting in place the Fortanix solution I described to you a few minutes ago, providing that as a central resource, and then having application teams use that central resource to access the credentials they need and to provide the services that they need. This is the project we're running right now with one of the largest oil companies in the world, as well as with some top 50 global banks that are looking to really get a fresh start going forward for their encryption environments. And I want to throw one last one in here just to kind of round out the conversation, one that you may not have thought of yet, which is this idea of private multi-party analytics. Most of our organizations have volumes of insights that are lurking within our data. If we could just put those data sets together and explore those. Or there may be valuable information we can get if we can share data with other people. But what happens when that data is private? This is the notion of multi-party analytics, where if you have a set of data and I have a set of data and we want to compare that data and draw conclusions from it, but I'm not allowed to see your data and you're not allowed to see my data, how do we do that? Private multi-party analytics says that we each will provide our data into a secure environment provided by Fortanix. We'll leverage the hardware security of the Fortanix solution. That data will be processed and analyzed within that secure hardware enclave. I will not have access to your data. You will not have access to my data, but we can share the conclusions that come out of it. And the goal here is that every party can retain control of the data at all times, but yet we can share the insights that come from it. And we commonly are seeing demand for this in healthcare environments as part of research projects. I want to be able to compare actual patient data against research models, but also going to be valuable even in internal discussions. A financial services environment where different regulatory frameworks prevent the sharing of data across entities, but the business has a need to find what those insights may be. This is where we can compare them. So a lot to run through there, but I thought it was important to just give you a sense of what kind of the power of a new data protection platform in these kind of environments, whether it be moving to the public cloud, protecting the database infrastructure you've got, helping your development teams be more effective, or really providing a standardization and consistency across the environment for data protection. And just to kind of wrap up here before we get to questions, I think it's just, it's important to keep in mind that, the reason we're all doing this is that in a connected world that's dynamic, it's a dangerous place for confidential data. And what that too often has meant is that we keep private data private and hidden, but when data is hidden, it doesn't reveal its insights. It can't help us be innovative. It can't help us serve customers better. It can't help the organization grow. And so what we're trying to do here with solutions like the Fortanix solution and like our data protection platform is really be able to make the data protection pervasive, where data can be private even when it's out in the open, and protect even when it's out in the open. And in this world, data can enable collaboration and ultimately help all of our organizations be more successful. So that's the conversation I'm hoping that this 20 minutes here has prompted and started for you today. So David, let me hand it back to you. Why don't we take some questions?
Absolutely, yeah. Great presentation, David. Let me bring up this poll question for the audience while we take some questions. That is, what additional information would you like about the Fortanix solution? And we'll just leave that up while we do some Q&A. So let's see, first question that came in here, Michael is asking, is there availability for government customers? Can government customers use this?
Yes, government customers can use this. We are currently on the SOUP purchasing instrument, not to get too far in the weeds, and have access to that, but we're happy to talk with government customers and actually do have some projects running currently with the defense community.
Okay, excellent. Excellent. Another question here. Why wouldn't I just use my cloud provider's native encryption and key management? I'm sure you've gotten that one before.
We have gotten that one before. Well, I mean, so there's a couple pieces of that. First of all, there's the foxguard and the henhouse issue, right? Which is in many organizations, from a compliance standpoint, you want some separation between the party that's holding the data from the party who has the keys that have access to that data. And so, if you're using your cloud provider's native solution, you lose that separation. The other dynamic that we see is that most organizations, particularly large organizations, have multiple cloud platforms that they're working off of. I often hear people saying, "Hey, my business applications are running on Azure. My developers like using AWS. My new applications I'm building on GCP." Well, you got three big platforms there. They have three very different key management systems, and using our platform gives you the ability to have a single unified resource from which to manage across all those platforms.
Okay, very nice. Another question here, how can you manage encryption keys for public clouds outside of the cloud?
Well, there's a number of ways to do that. I touched on those briefly in the presentation. So, and it does vary by cloud provider. With GCP, for example, Google has created a interface that makes it possible for our key management system to reach directly into the Google environment and to be able to turn keys on and off. So there you have a very tight integration that happens there. In an Azure AWS environment, typically what you do is you manage the life cycle of the encryption keys within the Fortanix software, and then you would import or utilize those keys within the cloud platform as you need to protect your data.
Okay, that sounds easy. Another question, which public cloud providers do you support?
We're working with all the major ones right now. So GCP, Azure, Google, IBM. all have the ability to use our keys in various ways, in various shapes and forms. Again, with some variations depending on the specific providers and the way that they've set up key management within their environments.
Okay. And then to kind of turn that around, if I'm not using the public cloud, can Fortanix still help me?
Absolutely. So many of our customers are using this for kind of classic on-premises environments. They're running in their data center. They've got an existing estate of hardware, of data that needs protection. Usually have some combination of legacy solutions there. I mentioned some of the names like Talos or Gemalto and Cypher, some of the common ones that are there. And are looking for something that is easier to manage, that is less brittle, that is more flexible, that is friendlier for the application teams. And Fortanix drops right in and does that. And that's typically that kind of that data protection as a service a solution we talked briefly about a moment ago.
Okay. And then here's a question from Joel, maybe to kind of give us a high level, reason, justification for this. Why is it so important that we encrypt our data?
Well, I mean, the idea of encrypting the data is it's the ultimate data protection, right? I think we've seen over time that we keep building the walls higher and higher around the castle of the data center, but the ladders keep getting bigger and people keep getting over it. If data is encrypted, you kind of don't need to worry about it. I mean, as a data point under the California Consumer Privacy Act that went into effect the first of the year, if you have a data breach and that data was encrypted, the statutory penalties don't apply. Because it says that you took steps to protect that data. Encrypted data is effectively worthless. That's why the military relies on it. And so if we've encrypted the data, we can't relax on the rest of security, but the consequences of a security breach drop dramatically. And then our confidence in that data being able to live and be used in hostile environments can go up.
Okay, excellent. And then probably the last question we have time for, and that is, how should people get started with Fortanix? Like, what's the first step?
I see two ways in which customers are approaching it. It really depends on where they're at. I mean, in most cases, we see customers dealing with one of the challenges I outlined here today, and looking for a specific solution to one of those pain points. I've got applications I want to move to the cloud. I've got data I want to store in a public cloud. How do I manage that? I've got an application team that needs to do better at security. I need to give them a tool for that. My databases are too hard to manage the security around. So, those sorts of point solutions can be very easily added into an environment alongside of what's already there. We can coexist with what's already in the environment. A wide variety of deployment mechanisms all available for you there. So that's kind of the most common place and kind of the way we typically recommend we start. We do see customers who are kind of throwing their hands up in frustration with what they have and want to engage in a kind of more broad enterprise-wide rethink of how they do data protection encryption, and we're certainly happy to have that conversation with them as well. But for most customers, the fastest and easiest way is, you've got some specific corner of your world where you feel like the current tools you have and processes you have just aren't scaling up and aren't dynamic enough. Give us a call. We'd be happy to help you try and see if we can offer you something easier to use and more flexible in its place.
All right, awesome. Well, great presentation. We got a lot of good feedback about the presentation. Thank you so much for being on the event today, David.
Great. Thank you very much, David.
For more information, check out Fortanix website, and also check out the handout that's available there for download in your audience console that is entitled Simplified Hybrid Cloud and Multi-Cloud Encryption. So download that and check it out after the event. All right, now it's time for our first grand prize giveaway. But before that, we've got an Amazon $500 gift card, and that's going to Nikki Mehta, M-E-H-T-A, Mehta, from Michigan. Congratulations, Nikki M. from Michigan. And our first grand prize, our first Mac Mini, that's going out to Jim Best from California. Congratulations, Jim Best from California. And now it's time to introduce our next presenter on today's Megacast. Welcome, Federico Hacamine, Senior Product Marketing Manager at Okta. Federico, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me okay?
I can, yeah. Thank you for being on. Take it away.
Yeah, right on. Okay. Hi, guys. Thanks for your time today. Thanks for being with me here. And yeah, I hope you guys have a good time with this quick presentation. So I know this is the reason why most of you are here today. Most organizations are dealing with systems both on-prem and in the cloud, right? And you have a lot of people working pretty hard to extend the threat surface, so you have more work to do. Subscribing to new systems in the cloud and keeping those systems running on-prem still, things like Oracle and SAP. So IT is growing a lot horizontally. And the challenge for security is that you still are kind of pretty much accountable for any data leak or any compromise in information, in confidentiality, in availability of the data, in integrity. So how do you take care of all of this with the limited resources you have today in this ever-shifting environment? So my name is Frederico. I'm a security specialist and aficionado actually at Okta. And because we have a kind of a short time, I don't want to kind of dig into specifics like or into big things like zero trust. I just brought to you something that I hope will be very useful for you, which are basically my personal top 3 tips for securing the hybrid IT, considering these constraints we talked about, the fact you don't have an extensive staff and everybody's working to extend that threat surface. In the interest of time, I'm going to start with the punchline. These are the tips, okay? And I'll break down those to you. But first and foremost, something very important is to frame what you need to protect. So there are some tricks here I'll teach you on how you can do that in a way that you will be always on top of the game. The second thing is how you secure them wisely. So it's all about consolidating security and using less tools to cover as many things as you can. And finally, and this is my favorite, to be honest, is how you can be the end user's best friend. And this is very, very important in a world where security is not on the driver's seat or IT is not on the driver's seat, right? Everything else is deciding for the technologies, and you got to secure whatever they throw at you. So yeah, let's kick start. The first one, know what to protect. So remember, right, we have systems both on-prem and in the cloud. And if you just take a look at this picture, the first impression is, damn, I have a lot to protect. I got to protect pretty much everything. But actually, there are some tactics that you can use to better predict and figure out what you got to protect and how. So the first thing I like to think about it to frame, and I'll go here halfway right now, is with the cloud. And when it comes to the cloud, when you're thinking about protecting cloud workloads and systems, my mindset is you got to be ready for everything. Just because cloud is so easy to subscribe to and to get going, right? So if your marketing team, let's say, for example, they need to engage with the audience on the website and provide direct support, they will just go subscribe to something like Drift, let's say, which adds a chat to web pages. We'll start using it. They will have pretty sure success with it because it's always good to talk to customers. And then all of a sudden you get a system that you need to secure and make sure that there's no security issues over there or vulnerabilities. So cloud is kind of a no-brainer. It's pay as you grow, pays as you go, and the time to value is awesome. So for cloud, you got to always be ready to support whatever the users want to use effectively and fast. I'm going to talk about the fast part of it real quick later. But on-prem, you can do some tricks. You can pull up some tricks in order to reduce the threat surface and also know what to protect. So the way I like to frame this is that it all goes around the likelihood of an on-prem system staying. And this could be determined by 3 axes here. So I brought them over. The first one, the most important, is whether the system is business critical or not. But then you have 2 other axes that are more like in regards to a system not doing a great job for you or maybe being bundled. So you have the bundle axis and the proprietary or open standards. So open standard systems are easier to migrate to modern platforms. That costs you less and you need to patch less. Here are some examples of those. We won't have time to dig through them, but what I want you to see is like the contrast. So for example, in the top left-hand side, you're seeing systems like SAP, Oracle Business Suite. They carry a lot of business intelligence. You spend a lot of time and money putting those up. So chances are this will stay on-prem, and therefore they need to be secure. Whereas like on the opposite side, bottom right-hand side, you see solutions like Microsoft IIS, the web server, LDAP, ADFS, when in those solutions, actually, they are pretty much standardized, standalone, and open. So chances are if someone is deploying, let's say, a new host for web pages, they will never stand up on Apache or IIS these days. You just go to AWS or a place like that, and then you just host it from there. Why this is important is just because it gives you a frame of mind or a mindset when approaching systems. So the systems that will stay, they need to be secure. As much as cloud systems, hackers, they don't choose whether they will attack only on-prem or cloud solutions. They will try and attack everything, so they need to be secure. However, everything that's not really essential, you can be proactive and retire those systems, which is great because you have way less servers to patch or to keep up to date or to look for vulnerabilities. And there are a few things that you can be proactive about and rethink. So for example, let's say Active Directory, if you use that for GPOs and for pushing configuration and device management, you know that Active Directory just manages Windows devices. So chances are 3/4 of your devices, iOS, Android, and MacBooks, they are not being managed there. So maybe you can be proactive and think about device management. The key takeaway with knowing what to protect is on the cloud, be ready for everything, and have security platforms that support you that way. So solutions that have best-of-breed security, support open standards, and have integration wizards. So you don't need to know all the nitty-gritty details about what you need to protect. It gets very easy. You're going to see an example soon. In on-prem, use the secure, rethink, and retire framework to know what you should be focusing on securing versus what you should be focusing on retiring. Tip number 2, consolidate security wisely. So once you know everything you need to protect, you need to come up with a tactic or with tools that will protect everything across the board. As many workloads as you can, as many apps as you can, using a single policy or policy set. When people think about security, for the broader IT, the first thing that comes up in the mind is like, let's do network security, which is great for separating trusted and untrusted places, if you will. So if you have like everybody on the intranet logged in with the machines over there physically present, it's amazing. But reality is this is no longer kind of true, right? You have people accessing systems from their coffee shops, from different places, and it can get very challenging because also they are accessing different kinds of workloads, things in the cloud, things on-prem, multi-cloud, anything goes. What you need is some kind of solution or some security stack that will stand by regardless of loading or working on G Suite or on AWS or GCP or on-prem. So something we would like you to think about is to use identity as a perimeter. So all those things we talked about, devices, workloads, apps, networks, everything is constantly changing, but the people are still the same. So if you set up a perimeter around the people or around the machine or the API calling those services and those solutions, you can see patterns like when they access it, how they access those systems and all. And this helps you with adding security. And the good news, maybe bad news actually, is that we don't pay much attention to this in the identity industry, right? You have a lot of identity-related data breaches, and you spend a lot of time on these tickets to reset passwords and things like that. But at the same time, right in the middle here, most organizations don't spend a lot of time putting up controls around identity like self-service password resets or multi-factor authentication. And if you're like on the red team, you know, like one of the first things you're going to go after are phishing attacks or credential stuffing. Why I said this is good news, because if you put the minimum effort over here, you can cover systems across the board, both on-prem and in the cloud. And you can really reduce the toll here, both on the data breaches and also on the amount of work you got to put up yourself. And as long as you use a single stack that can holds up everything, support all the resources from SaaS apps to custom apps and APIs and on-prem apps, you're good, because also you can use the same single policy for authentication authorization for everything. And this is really magical because you work way less and you get auditing all centralized in the same place. So this is the takeaway. If you're considering consolidating security to secure across the board on-prem and in the cloud, you can think about identity as a linchpin. And if you do this cohesively, you're going to have a single place to set up everything you've got to do. And finally, you want to be the end user's best friend. And the reason why is that being frank, being realistic, security is not on the driver's seat anymore. And people can subscribe to things regardless of how you control security in your premises. So for example, here we had Unroll Me, which was an amazing service 10 years ago that promised to get people a way of subscriptions, email subscriptions with a button. It got a lot of traction. Fast forward 5 years later, or 7 actually, it was the worst idea ever because they were actually parsing emails and reading information from people out of those emails, which is pretty terrifying. And if you do your job right, what's gonna happen is, on the opposite side, is that you're gonna see have a lot more visibility into the systems people are using. So this is a report that we release every year called Businesses at Work. We just released one this week that shows like how many apps, for example, our customers are seeing and controlling from Okta. So as you can see, the number of apps grow up really fast, which is kind of terrifying for a lot of people. But as soon as we ask, like, why do you think this is happening? They kind of answer, especially in security, kind of makes sense. Yeah, everybody's adopting more systems. But the good news here is that visibility means you can actually apply policies over this. And the way you get that visibility is by providing easy access for everyone and providing a dashboard or something that people can access all the systems they need securely from the same place. So the person in marketing, after rolling out Drift, what they do is they talk to you and they want to reach out to sales and other departments. So by providing a dashboard with a quick integration, you can be that hero for your entire IT and no longer the, let's say, department of no, like many people see or perceive security. So that's it. As long as you are providing convenience to the end users, you don't need to be a forcing function to add security. They can go after you and ask you to include their systems and therefore include security in the places they access today. And the security team can be the enabler of that effect. So, okay, I talked a lot, but I guess it's better if I show you how it looks like. So what I'm gonna do here real quick is share my screen. And just head over to my Okta and show everything that happens together when you pull all that up. So I'm going here to access my system. I'm using Okta as an example. And I'm logging in. The first thing you're going to see is that if you have a central place, actually you can enforce different policies that can be more secure or more effective to your users. Here I'm using WebAuthn, which is a new standard that works on many, many devices, and I'm doing the biometrics for authentication. And from this place, I can access everything, cloud to ground. So I can access my AWS, my Oracle Business Suite, and something like my Cisco umbrella. So it's the same tools for everything and everyone. We can go and see how this went later. So this is the convenience place, right? Because I didn't have to jump, for example, through a VPN to get into my business suite. And I can see my umbrella, my AWS, and everything. So everybody wants to be in this place. Oops, I have an extra MFA, I guess. Just hold on, because I'm going to the admin. Okay. So everybody wants to get things in front of their people. So let's say we talked about marketing. Marketing goes after you and say, Drift is awesome. I want to extend that to the sales team. So you can go here and you can add the app. And here's the good news. Systems like Okta, they provide you template-based integrations with step-by-step instructions. So you don't need to be a specialist on all these systems you need to integrate with. You get step-by-step instructions that you just go and copy and paste that information, And that will get you single sign-on, provisioning, account control, and all that. So it becomes to be that central place for you. The systems get on board and everything, and then from the same place you can apply policy. So here are a bunch of things that I still need to do to get my security really tightened up, but I did a lot of stuff already. In all these things that I do, it rolls out for everyone in every single app that I have over here. And it all adds up to the syslogs and the monitoring I can do on top of that. So for example, I get real-time access to everything that's happening in terms of which systems people are accessing, where those are coming up from. And this is not only for accessing apps like I did here, Umbrella, EBS, and AWS, but also for changing configurations. So everything centralized in the same place, and you become to be the hero of your organization. So back to it. These are my top 3 tips for securing the hybrid IT. I hope this is valuable for you. If you follow those, to be honest, you can secure workloads both on-prem and in the cloud very effectively. So remember those. First, know what to protect. Second, consolidate security. And third, be the end user's best friend. If you're doing this and you see an app growth, the growth of apps you can protect yourself, you did a great job. So what we're doing here, and you can check it out later, is we're providing you a plane to help you get there using a solution like Okta, or you can use whatever you prefer. But if you're starting on this journey, just let us know. We can help you get there. We at Okta, we're a bunch of nerds like me, and we love working around security and making your life better. So yeah, with that, I'll pass it over to questions.
Yeah, great presentation, Federico. Thank you very much. Let's do some Q&A from the audience. And while we do that, I'm just going to bring up this poll question that says, what additional information would you like about the Okta solution? So let's see, first question that came in, they're asking, what about using Okta in public websites and applications? Is that possible?
Yeah, that's possible. So everything I showed you works for both, works actually for all sorts of assets. Packaged apps, we have that catalog with 6,000 integrations both on-prem and in the cloud. We have open standards as well, and we have SDKs and APIs for the top 11 programming languages, ranging from Go to Angular, all the things that the cool kids are using. And the platform works for both customers, let's say customer access or your public websites, as well as your internal websites. The difference on the customer website is that everything's transparent and people don't need to see that dashboard.
Okay, very nice. I like that. So a lot of options there. Another question, what about using Okta with like DevOps and automation tools?
Yeah, so we have standard support for that as well. So if you use something, let's say like Jenkins or Terraform, or your other teams use it, we have native providers for that. So everything I did on my dashboard, you can pretty much do automatically, which is pretty amazing. And it connects seamlessly to your DevOps pipe. So if you have developers, they roll out a new app, they publish that app gets security automatically. Authentication, multi-factor authentication, password reset, all custom branded, custom URLs, custom logos, all your own way.
Very nice, very nice. Okay. Another question here, they're asking, can Okta replace Active Directory?
So yeah, but it really depends, you know. So you gotta plan this carefully. So where are the places that Okta can do that job directly for you? Like plain, standard, you gotta be doing this, no-brainer. First and foremost is storing users, groups, and things like that. So Okta can do that, and even more than that, Okta can pull up that information straight from your sources of truth. So let's say you have an HR system like Workday. It will pull up all the information from HR automatically for you. So this is great for provisioning, but as well for when you have a disgruntled employee and you need to cut off access immediately. So there are a few areas where Okta will not do a direct replacement to Active Directory, like device management. But the good news is that Okta integrates natively with the top 10, actually, device management solutions you have, from Mobile Iron to VMware Workspace ONE, and also Intune, among others. So what you do with Okta, coupled with device management, is that you can reach out as many devices as you have, from iOS to Chromebooks and all, and with identity provided by Okta. So those solutions will not do MFA for you. They will not do risk-based authentication for you or adaptive multi-factor authentication, but you can work with both together. And this is actually something that most customers do. Combine the best of breed, UEM with identity management.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, that's an important clarification there. Another question here, and we don't want to call out the competition, but they're asking basically, what makes Okta unique or better than other solutions out there in your opinion?
Yeah, and I mean, this is my personal opinion. I'm super biased, but something that I really love about Okta is how, first, it's simple to use. So like if you go to any Okta customer, especially on security and IT, they're raving fans. Because like the setup for applications you do in half an hour. You pull identities you integrate with Active Directory in 15 minutes. You streamline access in a day. Usually the deployments take less than a couple of months for more than 100 apps. So people love the agility and love how kind of it extends to different systems in a nimble way. So you go from that same dashboard I showed you, you get step-by-step instructions right in front of you. So this is what makes the difference. And if you need to dive into more details around the differences in terms of features and all, we actually have those reports we can share with you. So we are leaders on the Magic Quadrant, Forrester, like anything that goes around identity, we are the leaders. So that provides you the nitty-gritty, the fine details, and the reasons why. But if I got to pick one compelling reason, it's definitely ease of use.
Okay. And I know I said that was the last question, I think, but one more question came in here. I thought this is a good one. Can Okta be used for companies that are on premises only with no cloud presence?
So you can use Okta coupled with Access Gateway. It is a new product we just released for securing on-prem access. So you can do that. The thing that's the question is how what we mean by cloud only, like as the targets or as where Okta runs, because Okta runs straight from the cloud. But we can definitely double click on that, kind of try and dig a little bit that question. But long story short, bottom line, Okta works for on-prem as well because of this new capability we just released. It was like 3 months ago. Yeah.
Very nice. Okay. Well, I put a couple questions actually on that topic for you there in the queue. But that's all the time we have for our verbal questions. Frederico, it's been really great having you on the event today. Great presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all. Thanks for your time and have a great day.
For more information on Okta, check out the PDF that's available for download there in your audience console. It's the 5 arguments to justify your identity spend. And of course, also visit okta.com and give it a try for yourself. All right, now it's time for our next set of prize giveaways. We have an Amazon $500 gift card going to Mike Nackey from Indiana. Mike Nackey from Indiana. And our next grand prize, a Mac Mini, is going to Christopher Bowen from Pennsylvania. Congratulations, Christopher Bowen from Pennsylvania. A lot more giveaways, so make sure you stay tuned for that. And now it's my pleasure to introduce the next presenter on today's Megacast. I'm excited to announce Ganesh Umapathy, Product Marketing Manager at Duo. Ganesh, are you there?
Hey, Scott, I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can, yes, sir. Take it away.
Cool, thanks. Excited to be here. And to our audience, thank you for tuning into this session of the webcast to learn about Duo. I'm Ganesh Umapathy, Product Marketing Manager. And over the next 20 minutes or so, I'm excited to share with you on how Duo helps organizations secure trust for their enterprise IT and the cloud. Most of you might be familiar with Duo as a popular cloud-based multi-factor authentication or an MFA solution. Of course, Duo started with an MFA solution many years ago, but today, beyond that, Duo offers a zero trust platform to secure your workforce, meaning we are able to secure access to your users and devices to the mission critical application and data. So without further ado, let me start why you need this kind of a zero trust platform. So if you look at the threat landscape today, a lot of data breaches involve some form of compromised credentials. According to 2018 Verizon Data Breach Report, over 81% of breaches leverage stolen or weak passwords. This could be passwords stolen due to successful phishing attacks. We also find a lot of username password combo available on the dark web for purchase. So there's a security gap for the IT administrator because they're not ensuring or verifying the trust of the user to make sure he is who he says he is if you're just using the password. Another important threat vector is endpoints. So according to IDC report, over 70% of data breaches originate from an endpoint. And the risks of these devices include lost or stolen devices, devices infected by malware, or just device OS platform vulnerabilities or malicious apps running on those devices. So there's a gap in the visibility of what devices are in your network so that administrators can verify the trustworthiness of these devices before making an access decision. So these two gaps are really pushing security professionals in the industry to look for a fresh approach to security, and that's the Zero Trust framework. So why the fresh approach is the notion of traditional perimeter has vanished. And that's why the traditional perimeter-based security technologies have also failed because they failed to acknowledge the new use cases creating gaps. So if you manage an enterprise IT, it probably looks similar to this. You have a good amount of on-prem presence, but you also have a lot of cloud applications such as Office 365, Salesforce. You have users accessing your applications and data remotely. They might be around the globe. You might have offshore development centers. You might also be enabling some of those users to work using personal devices, mobile devices, laptops, or at least check their email using mobile devices. And also you're moving your workloads to clouds such as Microsoft Azure or AWS. So it's a complex hybrid IT kind of environment where the traditional security fails, and that's why you need to establish trust for your users and devices before making an access decision. And to add to those security gaps, various compliance and data privacy laws are catching up, holding the organizations accountable for the security. So last year, New York State implemented a cybersecurity regulation for Department of Financial Services, and starting January, a few weeks ago, California implemented its Consumer Privacy Act. So, and if you're an organization that wants to comply with standards, IT security standards such as ISO or NIST, what these security frameworks and data privacy and security laws have in common is that they prescribe best practices and require MFA as part of their security control. And not only an MFA, but also making sure that the organizations are granting access only to secure devices, which means that organizations need that visibility into the devices on the network. So to address these challenges, at Duo, we believe a zero trust approach can be implemented using these three building blocks. The first one is verifying user identities, and this is most commonly done with a multi-factor authentication. The second block is gaining visibility into those devices and running health posture assessments to gain or to understand the trustworthiness of the device itself. And finally, you need a fine-grained access policy engine that enforces policies based on various contextual information from users, devices, and the application access policy itself. So let's start with how Duo helps organizations verify user trust. We are most commonly known as the world's most easiest and most secure MFA solution. We are easy because it's a common, consistent experience for users when they're using any kind of application, whether it's an Office 365 or some kind of on-prem application. It's the same MFA experience for them, so there's no additional learning curve there. And also, it's easy because we empower our users with all the information and control. So users can self-enroll and self-remediate most of those policy issues. If they need to update the web browser, they can. The block page gives the information on why the device is being blocked and how they can upgrade. So the users have complete context of their access. And finally, most secure because we provide an out-of-band authentication solution that we highly recommend using the Duo Push. And also we support strong authentications with modern U2F or biometrics using WebAuthn standards today. So next. Duo MFA is also secure by design, and what we mean by that is to understand where Duo fits in this authentication workflow. So when the user logs into an application, they log in using their primary device, using their username and password. And the primary authentication takes place separately using your identity provider. It could be a Active Directory or something. And when that application is protected by Duo, it can be a VPN application, it can be SSH, it can be Office 365. The application sends a request to the Duo's cloud service, which then verifies the access policies and sends an authentication request on their secondary device. And this is usually a mobile phone if you're using a Duo Push or a phone call. We can also support, as I mentioned, YubiKey using U2F or a biometric using WebAuthn. And once the user authenticates on the secondary device, the users log in. So it's that seamless. There's no friction for the users. And we constantly hear from our customers on how easy a Duo MFA is to use. And to share that, I have an example for one of a large customer here, Facebook, a large social media company. They use Duo for an interesting use case, which is to secure developer access to their internal servers. So if you know how developers work, they constantly need to check in and check out code from their code repositories, which are in their internal servers. So they initiate many SSH sessions in a day. So the security requirement was to make sure that they verify the developer's identity and also gain the visibility on who is accessing those servers, but without causing any impact on, without having any impact on productivity. So using Duo and our U2F partner YubiKey, they were able to reduce friction with their MFA experience and have a strong security solution. So this kind of shows how you can implement Duo with a U2F solution that reduces MFA friction frequently that we hear from customers. Say, I don't need to use a hardware token. I just want to log in. I want a seamless MFA login experience, and we are able to provide that. The second building block is gaining visibility into those devices. So you cannot really understand your exposure to security and compliance risks if you don't know what devices are on your network. So Duo is able to provide that information based on the operating systems of those devices and based on the browsers. We're able to give enough information for the administrators to make an access decision. Here you can see a nice distribution of what kind of OS platforms are being used to access, and also if they're a managed device or a BYOD. So if, for example, a large healthcare organization, when they implemented Duo, they discovered 30,000 devices that they did not know was accessing patient data, and this significantly increased their exposure to compliance risk because over 50% of those 30,000 devices were out of date or out of compliance. And we provide a really deep visibility into those devices using our Duo mobile app and also our recently launched Duo device health application. We are able to provide those OS level feature checks to make sure that the OS is up to date, they're patched, and the vulnerabilities don't exist. The security features are enabled, such as on mobile app, you can make sure that the Face ID is enabled, screen lock is enabled, that it's not jailbroken, and on the workstations, you can make sure that the host firewall is turned on. If you have encryption, OS encryption on, make sure that the encryption is turned on. And we can also do some third-party agent checks, such as if you're running an Cisco AMP for endpoints, malware agent running on their endpoint device, and only then allow access. So this kind of deep contextual visibility helps administrators to enforce an access decision based on the health posture. I also want to highlight that we work with top MDM, UEM kind of solutions, such as AirWatch and Intune. So we are able to enforce policies at an application level to make sure only a managed device can access certain applications, whereas we already can access certain other applications. So we are able to provide that kind of a fine-grained access policy. I'd like to share another customer story here. Centara is one of the largest non-profit healthcare organization in the country, and Centara allows their physicians to use BYOD to access email and other applications. And email is many times used to send protected health information, or PHI. So the CISO there wanted to make sure that they are compliant with the HIPAA requirements, which requires a certain level of visibility into the devices that are accessing these PHI information. With our DIO solution, we were able to provide those detailed visibility into the devices, that they were able to consolidate their MFA and MDM budgets to go for to implement a DIO solution, and immediately they were able to discover over twice the additional devices that they had anticipated to be on their network and take remediation action. And the third building block to a zero trust solution for the workforce is to be able to enforce those access policies. So you have all the information regarding the device and the user trust, but you need to be able to take those information and turn it into an access policy so that you get those adaptive risk-based access authentication features. So with DIO, you're able to enforce policies. Most commonly, we see policies to block access from certain parts of the world, and also block access from anonymous networks such as Tor. We also can enforce policies for privileged users to be able to log into sensitive applications only using managed devices and not their personal devices. And this kind of fine-grained access policy engine lets the administrators map their policy framework with the required industry compliance standards such as PCI DSS, HIPAA, NIST. And last but not the least, you need to be able to enforce those adaptive access policies on your complex hybrid IT environment. So with DIO, you can secure any application, if it's on-prem, if it's in the cloud, it doesn't matter. We can deploy seamlessly with those solutions to provide the same kind of MFA experience for the end users. The one last customer story I would like to share here is our parent company Cisco deployed DIO. As many of you will know, Cisco is a large global enterprise and we use over 3,000 applications. We have a global presence with multiple users and devices. So they were with DIO, the Cisco CSO was able to implement a zero trust program to secure their workforce and gain all that visibility of the users and devices that are accessing their network, run all those endpoint health assessment checks at the time of authentication, and let DIO really be an enforcement point for access to their network and applications. So one of the IT security engineers mentioned that with DIO, now they're able to gain visibility into all the devices and ensure that 95% of their endpoint inventory is compliant with the security policy. So that's really key to close those security gaps that I mentioned that are RSG2 devices. So I'd like to close here by summarizing why customers choose Duo, why they love Duo. Some of the common recurring themes from our customers is that Duo is very easy to use, not just for the end users, but also for the administrators. We provide a seamless, intuitive experience for them, and all the for the administrators, all the integration guides are available on duo.com/docs. That's the website. It's not gated, so if you have a question on how to integrate to a particular application, that's available on the website. So it's really the ease of use that a lot of our customers share with us. And also, I would like to say that Duo has the broadest coverage. We support any or most kind of applications that you have, whether it's on-prem or in the cloud. And with Duo, you get the speed to security. We see several large organizations and universities rolling out to thousands, tens of thousands of users in a couple of weeks or in a month. So that really shows how you can significantly improve your security posture within a matter of weeks or a month. And all this enables the organization to lower the TCO. Also, I'd like to add that Duo is licensed per user. So if you have, when you enroll a user, you can protect that user's access to any number of applications from any number of devices. So that really helps organizations to lower that total cost of ownership. With that, I'd like to pause at this slide to show a sample of our customer base, but I'm happy to take any questions at this point.
Excellent presentation, Ganesh. Thank you. Yes, let's do some Q&A with the audience. While we do that, I'm going to bring up this poll question, and it just says, what additional information would you like about the Duo solution? So I'll just leave that up there while we do some Q&A. First, actually not a question, but a comment. Renee said, Duo works very well for us at MD Anderson Cancer Center. So love to hear feedback like that.
Awesome.
Exactly. Yeah, awesome. Another question that came in here, or comment, Luis is asking, can Duo be used to block access to resources from non-company provided or approved devices?
Yeah, of course, we provide the ability for the administrators to enforce policies so that you can block personal devices accessing certain applications. If we have a feature called Trusted Endpoints. So if you reach out to me, I can provide further technical information around that. Or you can also check on our website for Trusted Endpoints. That's a feature where you are able to identify which device is managed versus which device is a personal device or a BYOD device, and apply a per application policy to make sure that personal devices are not being used to access sensitive applications.
Okay, cool. And then I know you were talking at the start of your presentation about the new privacy laws. Eric is asking, with new data privacy laws, do you see things as getting worse or harder for IT folks, or easier? And either way, how do we prepare in IT?
Yeah, a great question. So the way I see it is data privacy laws are catching up a lot, because organizations have been known to collect user data, but they didn't really have any accountability to it. So it's empowering the customers, which ultimately is good for the business. More customers trust the business and they provide more business. So in a way, it's good. But yeah, for the IT, it may seem initially like an additional thing, additional project. But when you look at those controls, it's not really net new if you already have a good security program in place. It's just fine-tuning those policies to match those requirements. And it's also really about what kind of solutions you choose. For example, like some of the customers that mentioned, Duo is really easy to use, and with our access policies, you're easily able to map the access security control requirements on those compliance pieces, so that your organization can be certified compliant for those requirements.
Very nice. Very nice. Okay. Let's see. Another question here. Does Duo support security keys, including U2F tokens?
Yes, of course. Duo supports modern authentications using U2F, which is universal two-factor. We have YubiKey as our main partner. We also support other U2F security keys. We also support biometrics using WebAuthn standard. So yeah, we support the modern strong authentication protocols.
Okay, nice. Another question, do users have to enroll separately for each application?
No, that's a good thing about Duo is it makes it extremely easy for the administrators as well. So once you enroll the user in the Duo and configure the application policies, it's a one-time thing. They don't have to do it again and again for each application.
All right, very nice. Well, sounds like a great solution. Ganesh, it's been great having you on the event today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Scott. My pleasure.
For more information on Duo, of course, check out their website. And also check out the handout that's available there for download in your audience console. That handout is entitled the 2019 Duo Trusted Access Report, and it goes into great detail, really a beautifully designed document. So make sure that you download that one and also give Duo a try for yourself as well. All right, now it's time for our next grand prize and Amazon $500 gift card announcement. We have an Amazon $500 gift card going to Daniel Spagnol from Michigan. Congratulations, Daniel Spagnol from Michigan. And we have our next grand prize going to Paul Smith from Wisconsin. Congratulations, Paul Smith from Wisconsin. So two more really cool security presentations coming up here. All right. I'm told Andy's with us. Andy, are you there?
Yep. Hello.
Hey, Andy. All right. Well, it's now my pleasure to introduce Mr. Andy Fernandez, Product Marketing Manager at Zerto. Andy, thanks for being on the event today.
Thank you so much.
All right. Well, take it away.
All right. Perfect. Thank you. Well, I want to thank everybody for their time. My name is Andy Fernandez. I'm a Product Marketing Manager here at Zerto. Today we're going to talk about something really interesting, really around two things. Talking about what the cyber attack landscape looks like, specifically around ransomware, how that's shifting cybersecurity strategies, but most importantly, how are you evaluating your own data protection around this as well. So as we start thinking about ransomware, right? I think this is something that's been around for a few years. It's just one of the many cyber attacks that leave our data susceptible. But if you look at the intensity, the growth, and the volume of attacks, I think we all are very familiar with the headlines out there, right? Just starting off with the holidays, we saw that Travelex was held by ransom with hackers as well. You're seeing municipalities, hospitals, financial institutions, insurance institutions, and even retail organizations fall susceptible to this. Not too long ago, just last month, you had the state of Louisiana declare an emergency just because of the severe ransomware attack that you had in New Orleans. And, you know, as we look at geopolitics and everything that's going on globally at this point, we're also expecting to see a bit more alert, right? If you saw the Department of Homeland Security sound an alert, really discussing what Iran was doing and the fact that a lot of the ramifications that will come from this situation will be in the private sphere. Really our hospitals, our municipalities, our financial institutions, and attacking the private spheres and institutions. So what we're seeing is really a severity in the growth, right? But if we try to put a number to this threat, you know, just in 2019, we saw that $11.5 billion was the predicted cost. You saw a 300% increase in the total volume of ransomware attacks. But this is what's most important. The fact that the average cost of recovery was $1.4 million. Here you're looking at not just what some folks who may have paid the ransom, which they shouldn't do, but it's really the cost is around the direct service disruption, right? The loss of internal productivity, a complete halt to services. And in the long term, something that's a bit more qualitative, it's also the reputational and PR damage. Especially, you know, depending on what industry you're in, if you're a public organization, that could be very, very damaging to your brand, especially if you're heavily dealing with user data as well. And just to give you an example of how severe this could be, let's take a look at Arizona Beverages. I think within North America, we're all really familiar with this organization. They're over $3 billion in a global company. They were attacked by iEncrypt, a strain of BitPaymer. Over 200 of their servers and network computers and endpoints were completely encrypted. What this did, though, was completely halt their ability to process orders for almost a week. Millions of dollars a day in sales were being lost. Now, this was just a direct ramification, right? The direct disruption or interruption of their services. But just the amount of time, the amount of resources that this IT organization spent on trying to recover from this is something that they're still addressing to this day. And that's just not addressing even the PR component of it as well. But this just kind of puts a logo to the example of anybody really could be a victim of a cyber attack, specifically ransomware. One of the interesting things that we did as well last year was we sponsored a survey with IDC, a software analyst organization. And what we asked them to do is really evaluate over 500 of your colleagues and peers in the industry, everybody who's a system administrator, IT manager, directors, or even CIOs, to really get an understanding of what threats they were facing and what were the consequences. And we found something really interesting there. Now, out of those 500 folks, 84% of them experienced a malicious attack in the past 12 months. 89% of them were successfully attacked. And 93% of them resulted in data corruption or loss. Usually we don't try to poll the audience and talk about who's been attacked or not, but when it's done privately, you see how severe of a threat this is, especially how successful the attack is in encrypting your data and resulting in data loss for these victims. Now, what we're seeing then is that there is no such thing as 100% protection. There is no complete bulletproof cybersecurity strategy. So if you look at how cybersecurity has been dealt with in the past, it's always been exclusively focused really on prevention. How can we ensure that we prevent these attacks? And that's still extremely important. But as you're seeing people have disparate systems, hybrid cloud strategies, they're having multiple growing devices, both IoT devices or even endpoints and the mobility that they need, to be successful as a global organization. This is forcing people to change their strategy. It's not just about completely securing network parameters. That's important. But the focus also has to be on safeguarding this data that's spread across your systems, all of your devices and your clouds as well. This is what's crucial. But I think the best way to identify this is really defining what this strategy looks like. What is actually safeguarding this data defined as, and what does it mean from a mindset perspective? Well, that's what we call cyber resilience. And cyber resilience simply is just the ability to prepare for, to respond to, and to recover from a cyber attack. It's not just about preparation and prevention, but it's to be able to see the entire continuum and effectively respond and recover from an attack, regardless of what that cyber attack looks like. These are really interesting quote from CDW in their Cybersecurity Insight report. And I think this does a really good job of identifying what this strategy looks like. And it says, prevention isn't the answer. Organizations have never had success stopping attacks. To survive, they need to build a strong internal security culture that mitigates risk. Surviving the accident is what's important, not preventing it in the first place. Think of it as a bend, don't break approach. And that's really where the industry's headed. That's where we're seeing the shift on really identifying and looking at, what does our recovery solution look like? So for the rest of this presentation, we're really going to focus on two things. Really, at first, it's your people and your process, right? Understanding what you need to do in order to build a strong process and culture that's focused on cyber resilience, that's focused on mitigating risk. And then on the second one, it's really looking at the technology, ensuring that you have a solution and procedure in place to effectively recover that data. Now, as you look at your people and your process, right, and from a cyber resilience perspective, that's the preparation and response. I think most folks on this panel right now and everybody who's already presented has really talked a lot about preparation and response, how important it is to have a best practice and most importantly, a framework, right, similar to the NIST cybersecurity framework. There's a lot of components to this as well. You always have your recovery piece, your identification, your protection, detection, and response. Now, each of these come with best practices and both the processes and the procedures to have. when preparing your cybersecurity strategy. But what we're looking at today is really just focusing on the recovery piece, right? One of the things that I want to mention and be very specific about is that, Zerto Software, we're not a cybersecurity company. We are not a cybersecurity prevention organization, right? What we focus on is really just an aspect of the framework, and it's around recovery. Your ability to also prepare, but most importantly, recover your critical data after a cyber attack such as ransomware. So one of the things that we did is we spoke to our customers who've already survived or been through ransomware situations, and they give us some really good advice. And I think this is the most valuable thing that we can offer you guys as well. It's understanding what are our customers saying, what are the survivors saying. The first and most important thing, and luckily you have some other folks presenting today, for example, KnowBe4, on what it looks like to really deliver continuous user and admin education. Now, one thing is to continuously improve the technical skills of your response team, of your IT administration team, of your infrastructure folks, and all your security analysts. But one of the most important pieces as well is to continually educate your organization. Every single organization has attrition. There's always going to be new folks coming in all different quarters of the year, and a lot of folks leaving as well. So you can't simply just do a training or make sure that everyone's been tested on certain security practice once a year, because all it takes is one vulnerability, one person who doesn't really understand or is not educated enough to deal with some of these threats as well. So that's extremely important. The other one is the mentality. You cannot think that your organization is impenetrable. You might have some of the best security hardware and software in the planet, but if you have the assumption that you're impenetrable, that's when you're at most risk, because you may not be following through on certain procedures because you're depending on your hardware, on your software. One that I can't stress enough, and we'll continue to talk about this throughout the presentation, is actually testing. You have to test your recovery plans. You have to prove those RTOs and RPOs and that you're meeting SLAs. Always have multiple people comfortable with this process. Everyone has down days. People, leave the organization. People have vacation. People get sick. They have their own personal things to deal with. So you have to have multiple people who are comfortable and aware of how to effectively respond to a cyber attack as well. And always take advantage of the third-party expertise. That's really important. But the most important thing about this is not just to take advantage of a consulting firm after you have been hacked, after your data has been encrypted. It's doing it before, bringing in pros early to establish and understand and really audit what does your framework look like. Are you following through and are you doing it correctly? That's what's most important, that you do it before the event of an attack. And embrace change. That goes hand in hand with the mentality. You always have to look for ways to improve. If you think about terms, and I use the term R&D, all right, for these cyber criminals, it's always improving. It always seems like they're a step ahead, and there's always going to be a new vulnerability, whether that's a hardware vulnerability or even people themselves. There's always going to be something new that we have to watch out for, and you have to be ready to embrace change. Now, when it comes to testing, a lot of those folks are limited in their testing capabilities because of the impact that it has on their production environment. But when you think about your testing, it's not just, we completed the quarterly or the annual tests around our DR or backup. It's not about that. It's one, doing it a lot more. Are you able to actually recover? Can you validate that you can recover the data that's been encrypted? Can you do so in an appropriate amount of time? And are you able to test it in an isolated environment so you can test as much as you want? And if your testing isn't passing, are you investigating and addressing the anomalies that you're finding? That's really important. There's so much more to discuss from a framework perspective. But today, for the rest of this presentation, I want to focus on the recovery side, right? This is where Zerto shines. But based on that same survey that we saw of the folks who saw a significant rise in ransomware attacks, and they also fell victim to it and saw data loss themselves from this. In that same survey, we asked them about their digital transformation initiatives. And digital transformation isn't just about, the sexy digital transformation terms that we hear out in the marketplace, but it's also about to be continuously adapted to your environment. And that includes cybersecurity as well. Now, 82% of those respondents who had some type of initiative, they believe data protection transformation was critical to their success. Now, why is that? Well, if we look at today's current traditional recovery environment, it really hasn't changed for decades, right? If we think of data protection and we think of cyber attacks and ransomware, everyone thinks 3-2-1, right? And it's just been the traditional 3-2-1 rule. Have your backups ready, and you'll be able to do it, right? You have your production systems, you have your backup infrastructure, and then you have some type of offsite storage, right? Whether it's a cloud archive or backup tape and disk. Now, in the past, in a different era, this has been okay. But if we know today, RTOs and RPOs are lower than ever. Expectations of downtime, there's no tolerance for that anymore. And if you look at the inherent flaws of traditional recovery, there are very specific challenges here. Most importantly, because of the production impact or the performance impact of actually performing backup copies of your environment, most organizations are subset to only do daily backups. Some can get to 12 hours. Even some at a high infrastructure cost can get to 4 hours. But when you're looking at the average organization, they're taking a daily backup. Now, that's a challenge. There's also dedicated hardware, dedicated backup appliances that you have to deal with that are expensive. They are very difficult to maintain, to refresh, and it's just an initial complexity layer that you have to deal with. And if you think about backup, to quickly recover data, that's not really a backup use case. And so backup infrastructure isn't really suited for a disaster recovery scenario, and we consider cyber attacks a disaster recovery scenario. And one of the most important things, and it's really about time, is application consistency, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. And just another thing, if you're only depending on tapes as your sole strategy to recover from backup, that's difficult. That's something that you wanted to avoid as well. But if we think about initially what we mentioned about protection gaps, right? You have the ability to only take a daily backup, right? If you're hit with ransomware at this moment, when is the last time that you can recover? Think about the current gap that you have. Whether it's 4 hours, whether it's 12 hours, or most importantly, for most people, it's 24 hours. That's already an inherent accepted loss of data in the face of any type of ransomware attack. In today's era, that's unacceptable. The C-level would never accept an entire loss of data for one day. And traditional recovery, it can't deliver anything more than that because of the impact it has on your infrastructure. Now, what's even more important, I think, than that is the amount of time, effort, and resources it takes to recover from a ransomware attack. Most organizations take weeks. So if you think about the nature of your enterprise applications, right, you have multiple VMs in each one. So when you perform a backup copy, we just use a common example here, right? You have your backup job that starts at 11 p.m. and finalizes at 5 a.m. on rush hours. Because of the nature of that multi-VM, it's now being copied at different checkpoints. Different VMs of that application are at different checkpoints. Now, this is fine if you're just archiving, but in the scenario that you have to recover, this means that your sysadmin and your infrastructure folks have to now take tons and tons of hours, days, and weeks trying to understand exactly at what point in time can we recover this enterprise application. And that just doesn't cut it. Think of all the time that could be spent on that, on something a bit much more proactive and focus on building your business. And if you just think about tapes, you can't control that environment, not just because of the environments that you might have a damaged or lost tapes, but also just the amount of time and the fact that you can't really guarantee that you can effectively recover quickly from those tapes. One of the examples I want to set here is Tenkata. Tenkata is a customer of ours, but before they were attacked by ransomware, they suffered an immediate 12 hours data loss by default, and it would take them about 2 weeks to recover from an attack. So keep this in mind. So for the next few minutes, what I want to focus on is what are the differentiators? And that's with Zerto, with continuous data protection. So when we refer to continuous data protection, think of this as the new era, the new evolution of recovery. That involves some type of replication technology. It involves a journal to be able to have a mechanism to recover that data, to be able to do it consistently and quickly, and to do it for a long period of time. Now, when you think about our replication, this is really the heart of what we call CDP, or continuous data protection. The fact that our replication sits at the hypervisor level, there's no production impact, you're always protected, it's immediate recovery, and you're not dealing with the nature of snapshots. And most importantly, it's technology agnostic. This can work on-premise, this can work in the cloud. It doesn't matter what your environment looks like, this replication goes across the entire environment and gives you that protection. But you still need a mechanism to be able to recover that data. So if you think about journal-based recovery, what it is in our journal, right, when you have our replication, what you're basically doing is creating a stream of checkpoints of data that you can simply roll back to. But these checkpoints aren't hours or days or even 10 minutes. These checkpoints are every 5 seconds. So in the scenario that you have a ransomware attack, in the ideal environment, you're able to simply recover 5 seconds back. You can rewind and recover within the journal. You can do this in a few clicks. You can recover an entire site, your entire application, your VMs, and your files. Now you think, how can I quickly recover an application like that? How does that actually work? Well, that's our differentiator as well, how we are able to enable you to quickly recover your multi-VM applications. Now, what we do differently is within a few clicks, what you can do is treat your applications as one cohesive entity. You can create what we would call a virtual protection group, or VPG for short. And when you create a VPG, you have designated all the VMs that are now at the same checkpoint in a consistent manner, so that if you know exactly when you have to recover back to, you simply are able to recover the entire multi-VM application immediately. Think about that, recovery in seconds, not having to have your entire infrastructure, folks. Try to understand and take hours and weeks to do this. It's just about simply being able to recover and focus on your day job and on what's important. And this is what really allows you to mitigate risk. Now, this wouldn't be worth anything if you could only do it for a few hours, right? You need to have this capability, not just for a few seconds and have that checkpoint, but also do it across short and long term. So one of the things that we do uniquely is that we've extended that journal with Zerto 7, giving you the ability to position that continuous stream of data and extend it to your secondary storage so that you don't have to consume a lot of primary storage as well. And this is really a differentiator when you're able to recover granularly from seconds to years. And one of the things that we offer as well is the ability to continuously test, to do it without the disruption. You can test whenever you want. You can validate your RTOs, RPOs. You even get a report on those tests that's automated as well. And one of the things that you can do as well is you can address and create bubble networks, and you're able to actually perform data forensics and evaluate and isolate data and understand and ensure that this is safe before you roll it back to production. So there's so many things that you can do here to just make sure that you are on par, that you are ready to mitigate risk and protect yourself from a cyber attack. So when you think about Zerto and you can think about CDP, think about replication, think about checkpoints of seconds without a production impact, recovering your multi-VM applications quickly and effectively, and to be able to do so from seconds to years. Now, think of the example that I discussed of a current customer of ours, Tenkata. Before they had CDP and they had Zerto's valuable replication, they saw the inherent loss of 12 hours and a minimum of 2 weeks of recovery. Now, after adopting CDP, they could quickly recover whatever they needed, whatever application or entire site they needed to do so. So what we saw was a change in a delta of 10 seconds of data loss, from 12 hours to 10 seconds. And another critical aspect here is that 2 weeks of recovery was just a few clicks. It took them less than 10 seconds to effectively recover from ransomware. So when you think Zerto in one slide, think of it this way: minimizing your data loss, virtually no data loss, and also maximizing your time and eliminating all the remedial work that you need to do to recover from a ransomware attack. Now, Tenkata isn't the only customer. We have dozens of case studies around this, and another really good example is Dotwell. And Tom Kerrigan, their manager of technical services, quote was, "We were hit by a crypto locker virus a second time, and with Zerto, we were back up and running in 15 minutes, saving us time, cost, and no disruption to patient care. Before Zerto, using traditional backup, it took us at least 4 to 5 hours to restore critical records." Now, what I want to do as well, we have so many examples, but I just want to make sure that we're aware of what's important. And it's these two things: that your people and process are in line, and that your technology solution is up to date, that it meets the standards of your organization and the standards of today's digital enterprise. Now, one of the reports I want to share with you, and we'll have it, make sure it's a leave behind and you guys get access to this, is our Gartner report on cyber attacks, which really follows along with what we've been saying. And the report is titled, "How to Prepare for and Respond to Business Disruptions After Aggressive Cyber Attacks." After that, I'd also invite you to just check out our products. and you can do this for free. Check out our lab. It's called Managing Protection with Zerto 7, and you can simulate ransomware recovery and understand exactly how it will work and how simply easy it is to be able to do so. You don't need any infrastructure or anything for this. You can simply do it on your browser from your own computer. So I really urge you guys to try this ransomware recovery lab. And the last thing I ask of you is to check out our agenda for ZertoCon. This is our flagship event. It's going to be in South Florida. And, to prove our commitment to understanding the future of cybersecurity, what are the best practices, and how our product can be an ally there for your cybersecurity strategy. We brought in as our keynote speaker, Kevin Mitnick, the world's most famous hacker. We have an early promo code here as well that you can use as hacker, and you'll be able to get a discount on this as well. But it won't just be a keynote on security. We'll have specific tracks on how our own customers have effectively recovered from ransomware. So, in conclusion, I want to thank you guys for your time. If we can't get to all of your questions, we'll make sure that I'll email you personally with all of the answers just to make sure you have a satisfied answer. So I want to thank you guys for your time, and now we can move forward to the Q&A.
Absolutely, yeah, great presentation. Thank you, Andy. We do have some questions for you. While we do that, I'm just going to bring up this poll question for the audience, and it says, what additional information would you like about the Zerto solution? Let's see, we got some great feedback from the audience. They were talking about how they use Zerto. Rodney says, we use Zerto for a number of situations, not just for DR. Brian said it's a great product, been using it for years. So love to hear that type of feedback. One of the questions that came in, David is asking, where does the continuous backup data live? Where do you actually store this data that you're protecting?
Yeah, so ultimately, Zerto is software only. There's no appliance, there's no agents. This is simply software that you install within your infrastructure, and the primary storage is where perhaps one day of your journal lives. That short-term recovery, that traditional DR lives for 1 to 2 days, if you want a little bit more, on your primary storage. The rest you position on your secondary storage, and that can go as many years as you'd like. So what that really is just, think of it as just software that lives at the hypervisor level that you can deploy anywhere you want, whether that's Hyper-V or vSphere as well.
Okay, and I think that's a great tie-on to this question. Adam is asking, is the ability to recover from ransomware process of just 5 seconds back really useful? So you're saying there's a lot more data out there. You can store as much data out there in kind of archival as you would like. Is that right?
Exactly. So this isn't just some, a layer that you have for a few seconds. This is just protection across your entire environment. So just as an example, we have organizations that keep our journal on their primary storage for 6 hours, and the rest is on a purpose-built backup appliance or even like a cloud archive, like something like a storage gateway on AWS. So this will live across your entire environment. We just like to provide the most granular and the best RTOs and RPOs. That's why we have the checkpoints of 5 seconds. That's the nature of the technology. But if you have to recover 2 hours ago or 3 hours ago, you can do it easily as well. We really focus on making sure that everything you have around detection is up to date, so you understand when you've been encrypted, and then you simply roll back a few seconds there. And that's what we would define as a best case scenario. But this isn't just about recovering in 5 seconds. This is about recovering as a whole.
Okay, got it. And then Nikki's asking, so in practical terms, what RTO and RPO are achievable? I mean, what do you see out there in the real world?
So for example, we had one of the folks here on, they were able to recover from an entire attack within 15 minutes. Tentado was kind of like that perfect scenario you almost described in a vacuum. They were able to recover in 10 seconds. But in a perfect environment and everything that's working, and you have Zerto solution and you have good infrastructure, ultimately that could be RTOs of seconds and RPOs of minutes. But if you were look at a baseline comparison across all backup and disaster recovery, we have the industry best RTOs and RPOs. And what you can do as well is you can prove that within your testing and just make sure that you're going to actually get the granular second amount that you would get on your traditional SLAs for recovery. Okay, nice. And then another follow-up question here from Adam. He's asking, exactly how does Zerto help you recover? You want to just kind of walk us through like what steps would I take, at a high level? So Okay, let's actually say, for example, you just have one application encrypted, for example, like SAP HANA or something. Before that, within Zerto, within what you call Zerto Virtual Manager, you would have your protection scope of VMs. You would then create what we would call a virtual protection group. You would designate all of the VMs that are within that application. Right, for example, your load balancing, your web server, database server, all of these things that are responsible for this application, you would put them online in the sense that in a few clicks, you would just click all the VMs that are responsible for that application. After that, you know, if you're doing your testing and if you're doing everything correctly, you notice and you know exactly when you've been encrypted. You simply click recover on our GUI. You click to the point that you want to recover, and that is 5 seconds of granularity, and then you're simply able to retire that entire application or simply just a VM within that as well. So that's really how it works. What I can do is, you know, set up a private call. I can show you on the lab as well. We have some documentation on our architecture and how it exactly works, and we can walk you step by step. We even have a full demo that we can offer you on how to recover from ransomware and what it actually looks like in a real life environment.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds very useful. All right, I think we just have maybe 30 seconds left. 2 quick questions. Can I really replace tape backup with Zerto?
So if you have a heavily virtualized environment, yes, you can replace tape backup. One of the limitations that we have right now, we don't do Office 365. And we do not do physical, right? So if your environment has a lot of physical and you're really making sure that you have one solution for Office 365, that's not something that's within our scope at the moment. So we are software only for virtual environments. So if that's what you have, then yes, you can absolutely do so. We also have great case studies of customers who have replaced backup and tape in heavily virtual environments as well.
Okay, nice. And then final question, what's the licensing model?
So we license per VM, right? So you can use Zerto via a managed service provider, and that's per month, traditional MSP type of pricing. Or with Zerto, you can have, there's a subscription out there, but most importantly with your perpetual, you just simply license per VM.
Got it. All right, well, that's easy. All right. Well, Andy, I'm afraid that's all the time we have for our live Q&A. There's a couple more questions still there in the queue for you that we didn't have a chance to answer, but really great having you on. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.
For more information on Zerto, of course, visit their website, zerto.com. Also, check out the handout that's available there in your audience console. It's the ransomware mitigating the threat of cybersecurity attacks. So, you know, make sure you check that out and download it. And of course, we appreciate everyone who answered that poll question. It's now time for our next prize giveaway. We've got an Amazon $500 gift card going to Wen Zhao, Z-H-A-O from Illinois. Congratulations. And an Apple Mac Mini going to Rodney Barnhart from North Carolina. Congratulations to you both. I'll post all the winners in the chat. And with that, it's time to introduce our next presenter on today's Megacast. I'm excited to introduce Megan Donlan, Senior Product Marketing Manager at Rapid7. Megan, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you for being on.
Absolutely. I'm excited to talk to everybody today and also hopefully share a little bit more information about Rapid7 and our detection and response solutions, specifically Insight IDR, which is our SaaS-based SIM, and it's very much focused on helping teams drive successful detection and response programs in modern environments, so including cloud environments as well. I'll kick it off today by talking a little bit about some of the kind of common challenges and problems that we've observed in the market that have kind of driven us to design the solutions that we have. And really, the biggest thing that we continue to see and we continue to hear on repeat as we talk to our customers is that security is growing more and more complex. Some of the key themes that we see when we engage with our customers in the broader security community: visibility is lacking. Everybody's IT footprint is continuing to sprawl, and it's very challenging and difficult for security teams today to keep track of hundreds of applications, users, remote users, multiple clouds, all of those different pieces. So analysts need tools that can help them keep up with the accelerated pace of today's modern environments, which is often catalyzed by the cloud, and also their DevOps counterparts. Oftentimes they're finding out about things after the fact and then, kind of having to scramble to get the visibility that they need once something is already stood up. The other thing that we see a lot is more noise. So with more data comes more alerts, and analysts are often drowning in an unmanageable and a lot of times false positive pile of alerts. And really all this means is more work. It's not helping anybody, and it's just an impossible volume for them to keep up with. The other trend that we see really frequently, before people become customers, is that their investigations are taking too long. When there's an active threat on your environment, time is everything. And every moment that an attacker is in the environment, it's just another opportunity for more sensitive information to be given up and further escalation within your infrastructure. And so they're taking way too long today, up to almost 300 days to detect an attack and then remediate it. So just way, way too long. And overall, it's just harder, right? There's a huge deficit in terms of resources, and problems are getting more complex. So security professionals are understandably burnt out, and we kind of have recognized at Rapid7 that the key to successful detection and response is really finding efficiencies that can help teams overcome these complexities and find and address threats as early as possible. And so with that, we've kind of created this portfolio of detection and response solutions. And these are meant to address those pain points of complexity and help teams move more effectively and efficiently as they tackle threat detection and response. So this includes our Insight IDR product, which is our cloud-based SIEM. We also have a managed detection and response service, which both leverages Insight IDR, but also the MDR SOC team informs a lot of the development and alerts that you see inside of IDR. So you're getting a lot of that expertise inherently within the product. And then we also have our security orchestration and automated response, or SOAR product, Insight Connect, which can help automate a lot of the manual repetitive tasks that can sometimes bog teams down. And we really see customers use any of these things independently or in any combination very effectively. For the purposes of today, though, I'll focus on Insight IDR, which again is our cloud-based SIEM product. And as I mentioned, we're focused on solving those core pain points that we've observed of lacking visibility, too much alert noise, and needing to find and address threats more quickly. IDR was built in the cloud from the start, and as a SaaS offering, we're able to offer a lot of scale and efficiencies for customers in terms of deployment, hosting, keeping up with that kind of ever-growing volume of data, ongoing management, so not needing to upgrade to a new version all the time, kind of automatically getting those updates and enhancements as we incorporate them into the product. Really, our core principle behind the product is to help, again, analysts be more effective and efficient when they're tackling threat detection and response. And we do that in a few different ways. First, we unify diverse data sets across the environment. So this includes endpoint data, logs, network user data. And then we also deliver really early, and not just early, but actionable detection. So less noise. We want those high fidelity alerts that teams feel confident acting on. And again, those are created and filtered by our MDR team, who's also driving a lot of this technology. And then providing teams with really rich, highly contextual investigations and automation tools that allow them to take action and respond very quickly once they identify those threats. So I'll dig into each of these areas a little bit more in a moment. Also want to talk about, so I mentioned our MDR team obviously informs, a lot of the development of our product and the alerts that we have. Rapid7 as a whole is really founded in this kind of deep heritage of research and expertise. Things like Metasploit, the penetration testing project, our own deception technology, threat intelligence from our research projects, plus insights from our customers. We work very closely and iterate very closely with our customers as we develop everything. That's very important to us. And so what we find is we've been able to, over the last couple of decades, build up this level of depth and expertise that would be very difficult to replicate elsewhere. And our customers benefit from this, obviously in the access to the research itself, but again, we infuse this into our products and the intelligence that fuels our alerts and the way that the product works. And for those reasons, we're trusted by more than 1,000 customers globally for threat detection and response specifically. So going back again to those kind of core customer pain points and how we address them, there's a few key themes which I'll walk through. So at first, that theme or pain point of teams lacking visibility, we want to give them the visibility and actionable insights, not just on their traditional on-prem data or across kind of one axis, but across their entire modern environment, helping them keep pace as their infrastructure changes. Second, we want to reduce noise for them, and we want to give them alerts that allow them to detect threats early and reliably so they feel confident taking action on them. And third, we want to provide those highly contextual investigations and response tools, which I mentioned, which allow them to actually take action. So let's look at each of these a little bit more in depth. Again, one of the things that I've heard quite a bit from customers when we engage with them, and I think this was kind of a founding principle when IDR was created a few years back, is how challenging it is to collect data across the environment and bringing it all into a single pane of glass for visibility. And this is a burden that's traditionally passed on to the security analyst, right? Like they're charged with figuring out how they're going to configure all of these data sources and figure out how everything kind of ties together and all of those things. And we really want to remove that stress because it's not value adding from a security standpoint. And so Insight IDR enables teams to get visibility across the environment by making it really easy to ingest that diverse data from endpoint to the cloud and the network with really straightforward processes and UX. So this means that when customers log in, we make it very straightforward for them in terms of the steps that they need to do, how they go about, tying everything into the product. There's even auto configuration options for customers that select to do something like that. And then we don't just collect that information. We take it several steps further than what you might find in a traditional SIM. We also go ahead and normalize that data, attribute it to users and systems, and then we enrich that data. So it's inherently different than kind of what you think of when you hear traditional SIM, and it allows us to then structure that data for analysis and to actually use it. So where traditional SIMs, you would spend a long time kind of correlating this information and kind of writing rules and things like that. A lot of that is already done just by feeding it into Insight IDR. The next thing that we, heard a lot about, as I mentioned, from customers is just that alerts are too noisy. They can't keep up with the volume of alerts. I was speaking with a customer the other day who has recently moved to IDR from a previous SIM, and they were saying that they had an employee at the company who had kind of configured the previous SIM that they had, and he left. And when he did, all of these alerts were firing, and they were in a shorthand that only that previous employee understood. And so, as far as they were concerned, they were all invaluable because they had to dig into every single one. There were too many firing for their small team to keep up with. And so it really wasn't providing any value at all. And that's a story that we've heard way too much. And so, again, working with our MDR team and that community of research and threat intelligence that I touched on earlier, we're able to provide those early, reliable detections, and we do so across a few different axes to give customers kind of comprehensive coverage across a number of different pillars. So this includes user behavior analytics, again, a very deep part and a foundation of Insight IDR and where our story kind of began. And this allows us to show customers, what's good versus bad activity through advanced analytics. So we build up a baseline and understanding like what users are doing every day. And then when we see something strange, like a user that logs in every day from Boston and is all of a sudden logging in from Germany, we're able to flag that really, really quickly. And then attacker behavior analytics, which is driven by real-time threat intelligence, curated insights, and again, behavioral analytics under the covers. So we continually innovate and add detections, but we're also, hold ourselves to a high bar with our NDR team to ensure that we're adding things that are actionable and valuable for our customers and not just more noise. And as a result of this approach, our customers get early detections, but they also get coverage across the attack chain. So for those that are familiar with MITRE ATT&CK, you get coverage across each of those axes. Our library, we're at 900 plus pre-built detections today and growing. And everybody gets access to those alerts within IDR from day one. So it's not uncommon in a POC phase even that we'll have customers that will, sign up, start feeding a couple different data sources and find some pretty serious threats right away, which, we don't like to see because that obviously means there's been an attacker that's kind of potentially in their system for a while, but it allows us to highlight how valuable these detections and the curation really are. And then the other piece which we talked about is just investigations taking too long. So almost 300 days from detection to actually remediating as a benchmark in the industry. We see it as a theme every year in the Verizon data breach investigations report. Investigations are just taking way too long. Attacks happen in seconds and they take months to kind of recognize and deal with. And so for us, it's all about how do we minimize response time and maximize the efficiency of our customers responding to these threats. The high context investigations are part of it. You can see kind of a screenshot of part of an investigation on the right-hand side here. We provide with each alert this kind of visual investigation that's a timeline of each step within. So it allows analysts to go and get a snapshot of everything that's happened in this attack chain really, really quickly, but then also dive into the details and kind of see the specifics of the machines and the users and all of that, rich detail and metadata that's involved and was potentially touched during this process. And again, that goes back to how we're kind of correlating things on the ingestion and behind the scenes, trying to remove steps so customers aren't having to jump between 10 different tools to put this story together themselves. They're getting all of that in one place, correlated, aggregated, everything for them here. And then we've also incorporated automation into Insight IDR to enable our customers to take actions immediately. So teams can do things like create a ticket for ServiceNow or Jira. They can contain a threat on an endpoint. They can suspend a user in Okta. They can enrich an alert with additional open source threat intelligence if they want to. So we've incorporated a number of these kind of core automation capabilities into Insight IDR to allow teams to take action right away. And for customers that choose to, they can also connect with Rapid7's Insight Connect, again, our SOAR product, to access, I believe it's a library of almost 300 plugins at this point, if they want to do kind of those more advanced automation workflows or different orchestrations. And we see really impressive time savings here, not just on the remediation of the actual event, which of course is super important, but even on the kind of operational things that can often follow an event and the tracking and things like that, being able to just have that, set it up once and kind of have it done for you is pretty powerful and time saving. And again, with the complexity that teams are saving today, we think so critical, which is why we've included many of those core workflows right in Insight IDR. I want to double down on that point for a second again, because I think that complexity is such a huge hurdle, and talk about some of the ways that we help customers recognize more productivity and greater return on their investment with Insight IDR. And there's a few keys that we think are really critical here. I touched on the cloud hosting earlier. So removing those management burdens and giving teams scale to be able to grow, immediately without needing to build up more of their environment to keep up with the amount of data that they're having to manage. So I'll come back to this point in a moment. Again, those analytics-driven, reliable detections that are fueled by our managed detection and response team and our intel and research teams. Automation, which I just touched on, and which we're continually seeing as a core kind of ingredient in the success of the security ecosystem. And then the intuitive UI. And I want to take a beat on this because it's something that is hard for someone to realize until they actually get into the product and start using it, but it's one of the greatest areas of feedback that we continue to get from our customers, of just like coming in and understanding what to do right away and what a big difference that makes, particularly for those resource-constrained teams that can't afford to go offline and ramp up on a tool for months and months, to be able to kind of get in right away and know where to go and be able to configure event sources without needing to read through, tons of documentation or fine-tune for their specific environment. This saves our customers a lot of time as they're getting up to speed. Coming back to that cloud deployment point that I touched on earlier, we consistently see customers up and running in days or less. We have, if you go to Gartner Peer Insights, we have some of the best scores for deployment time compared to other SIEMs in this category. And I won't read the reviews here, but we like to highlight this because we want people to test out, and we have a free trial experience that we encourage everybody to check out, because it is something that you can free trial. You can leverage your own data, plug it in, and kind of see those results right away. And so, it's one thing for us to talk about it. Obviously, we love to see these reviews and have our customers talk about it, but we also love to have people experience it themselves, which is why we make that free trial available. And then the one final point I wanted to touch on before I get to some questions is also just to mention that Insight IDR is now available to purchase in Amazon's AWS Marketplace. This is an option for both net new and existing Rapid7 customers that aren't already using our Insight IDR product. You can purchase through Marketplace. We've seen that for existing customers of AWS, this can sometimes be an attractive purchase option. You already have a relationship with them. Sometimes from a procurement standpoint, this can help expedite things for you. And it's also just part of our kind of ongoing commitment and relationship with AWS and other cloud partners in the space to support our customers in their modern environments as things change, and giving them different options in terms of how they purchase Rapid7. So I'll pause there. I've been chatting for a while, and I see that there's some questions coming in.
Yeah, there are some good questions, good feedback as well. People said they use Rapid7, and it's awesome. One of the questions that came in, David is asking, how customizable are the threat detection rules?
Yeah, so when you go into Rapid7, you'll see the kind of list of alerts that we have. And we, have kind of pre-configured things. Some things will have as a notable behavior that won't trigger as a full-on alert. Some things we'll have pre-configured as an alert, and other things we might have that we're capturing and they're not triggering an alert at all. So somebody can go in and say, actually, our team knows that, we have this scenario all the time that might look a little suspicious, but it's actually fine for us. We have an office here, or, a satellite office here where people travel all the time. We're going to change this rule to a notable behavior instead of an alert or something like that. The other thing that we see is that, while we have, I think, a very expansive kind of library of alerts already that folks find very useful, there's oftentimes custom data sets that people are sending in that they want to create alerts on. And we have a really nice experience for being able to, one, parse those data sets if they aren't already parsed to pull out the information that folks care about, but also from that, create custom alerts really intuitively. And as you go through the product, again, I encourage everybody to try the free trial that's interested in seeing it a bit more. We have these like kind of nice wizard type setup things for each action and activity that you want to do in Insight IDR. And so it makes it really easy. There's no guessing, right? Like it's, highlight, drop down, write what you want to happen, execute, like it's all really intuitive. So there's a couple different options there.
Very nice, yeah. Sounds good. There's a couple questions here around Azure. I'll just kind of sum it up with this one. They're talking about moving to Azure now. Where should they start in terms of security?
Yeah, that's a good question, and we've actually had it come up a few times recently. So I think the biggest thing about Azure is, and really with anything, you want to make sure first and foremost that you have the visibility is like the first step of anything with detection and response. And with Azure, what we've observed is that depending on kind of the package that you're signed up for, certain critical logs may or may not be turned on. And we have some information in our help docs and on our blog in terms of steps to kind of turn on the appropriate logs and make sure you're capturing the right data to start. For us, we always recommend our customers kind of push data into us through an event hub. So an Azure Event Hub is a nice kind of easy way to aggregate everything and push it over to Insight IDR, and then we can obviously do the correlation and alerting from there alongside all of the other data in your environment. So that would be a good first step. But yeah, the logging, because there's some tricks that we've seen, and sometimes people will say, oh yeah, I'm definitely capturing, this thing, and then they go in, it's like, oh wait, no, that one hasn't been logging for a while. So worth looking into.
Absolutely, yeah. Another question here they're asking about, is Insight IDR cloud-based only, or is there an on-premises option?
It is only cloud-based, yeah. So we're very much committed to SaaS, and we found that, in order to keep up with the volumes of data and kind of sprawling infrastructure that folks need today, we feel really bullish that that's the path of the future. So yeah, we're fully SaaS-based.
Got it. Okay. What about this question they're asking? What log source is most important when it comes to AWS?
With AWS, I think CloudTrail is always the best place to start. You could kind of from there see a lot of the core user activity and know, if somebody's spinning up a new region or anything like that, like that's all going to come through CloudTrail. So that's what I would recommend prioritizing and then go from there.
Okay, good advice. Another question here, you might have heard this one before. My cloud providers have security tools. Do I really need to worry about securing their infrastructure? I have a small team. Isn't this taken care of already?
Yeah, I love this question. Not necessarily. And, it varies by provider, but I think, AWS has done a good job with their shared responsibility model and understanding or in outlining for their customers kind of what's covered, what's AWS's responsibility, and what's the customer responsibility. But no, everything is not covered by your infrastructure as a service provider. And again, it can also, not only is it not all covered, but it can also vary by, your kind of license with them in different tiers. So I would strongly encourage everyone to first understand what's covered or not, but also, for most enterprises, we're finding that they're wanting to supplement with something else, and these cloud provider services are typically, focused on just their logs if they're even kind of complete theirs, and you want to track everything in your environment in addition to obviously the things that are in the cloud. So yeah.
Okay. Good answer. Then another question here about automation. What's available when it comes to automation and Insight IDR?
Yep, that's a good question. And so with Insight IDR, we have a number of kind of what we consider the most critical and core workflows that folks need to start with when they're thinking about, saving time and finding ways to take work off their plate. So that includes, as I mentioned, creating a case management ticket with ServiceNow or Jira. It also includes a number of containment workflows. So that's containing a threat on an endpoint and isolating a sensor in Carbon Black and a few others like that. And then the enrichment that I touched on, so being able to automatically enrich data with is this a known bad IP, or looking up a host or something like that. Even small things like extending URLs. So one of the open source things that we reference is unshorten. So just extending that URL to be able to see, what exactly is being linked to. There's a number of ones like that as well.
Got it. And you said this is available in the AWS Marketplace?
No, sorry, the automation, that's right in the product. Yes. Oh, sorry, you meant the overall?
Overall, yeah.
Apologies. Yeah, so Insight IDR, yes, it's available for purchase in AWS Marketplace, and we've seen that for a lot of our customers that already have a relationship with AWS, potentially their contract might include, minimum commitment with AWS, and this is quota retiring in that case for them. So it's just another option to purchase, and obviously if they don't have a relationship with AWS or would prefer to come directly to us, that is on the table as well.
Awesome. Well, I think that's all the time we have for our live Q&A, but it's been really great having you on. Thank you so much, Megan.
Thank you so much. Appreciate the time. Have a good day. Bye.
You too. For more information on Rapid7, check out the handout that's available for download there, from compromise to containment fast, and also visit rapid7.com and sign up for a free trial. Check it out for yourself. All right, it's now time for our final prize giveaway. We have an Amazon $500 gift card going to Brian Church of New Hampshire. And our final Mac Mini final grand prize is going to Stephen Hope of Wisconsin. Congratulations to all the prize winners on the event today. Before you go, I want to remind you to check out the 10 on Tech podcast over in the iTunes Store. We're publishing new episodes every week. They are interviews with some of the most innovative people in enterprise technology. Also follow Actual Tech Media on LinkedIn. That's where we're posting all of our latest and greatest stuff. If you are a potential sponsor of an upcoming event, reach out to us at connect@actualtechmedia.com. We'd love to chat about having you on the Megacast or EcoCast. And finally, we hope you'll join us on February 12th for the Enabling Data Protection, DRaaS, and Disaster Recovery Capabilities Megacast event. We'll be giving away 5 Alienware Aurora gaming PCs. That sounds awesome. And you'll hear from Datrium, Druva, Clumio, Zerto, and Cohesity. Hope to see you there. Thanks for joining today's Security Megacast. I had a great time. I hope you did too. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.